Derek Morales grits his teeth as searing pain radiates from his groin, the result of a brutal collision during a joint human-Nigean training exercise. He limps into the crowded Nigean civilian hospital, desperation etched on his face. The base's medical facility, overwhelmed with casualties from a recent skirmish, had turned him away. The hospital's sterile corridors buzz with activity as alien staff rush past. Derek's eyes dart nervously, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. He's never been treated by Nigean medical professionals before, and the thought fills him with unease. A receptionist directs him to an examination room. As he waits, Derek shifts uncomfortably on the bioadaptive bed, its surface molding to his human form. The door slides open, revealing a Nigerian nurse. Her iridescent skin shimmers under the harsh medical lights as she approaches. "I am Diana," she introduces herself, voice melodic yet clinical. "I will be overseeing your treatment." Derek nods, wincing as another wave of pain washes over him. Diana's four eyes narrow as she scans his vitals on a holographic display. "Your injury is more severe than anticipated," she states, concern evident in her tone. "Standard treatments may be insufficient." Before Derek can respond, a commotion erupts outside. The door bursts open, revealing an agitated Nigerian administrator flanked by security personnel. "We cannot risk treating him," the administrator hisses. "The potential for diplomatic incident is too great. He must be transferred to a human facility." Diana stands her ground, tentacles flaring in agitation. "Denial of treatment violates our oath and could jeopardize Earth-Nigeria relations far more than any medical complication." As the argument intensifies, Derek's pain worsens. He clutches at his groin, a groan escaping his lips. The sound cuts through the tension, drawing all eyes to him. Diana's expression softens. She turns to Derek, voice low and urgent. "There is another option, a Nigerian healing technique, highly effective but intimate. It involves close physical contact and may produce unexpected reactions in human physiology." Derek's eyes widen, understanding the implications. He glances at the administrator, whose mandibles click in disapproval. The weight of the situation settles on Derek's shoulders. His personal discomfort pales in comparison to the potential diplomatic fallout of a mishandled injury. "I'll do it," he rasps, locking eyes with Diana. "Whatever it takes." The administrator protests, but Diana's already in motion. She activates a privacy field around the biobed and begins preparations for the procedure. As her hands move towards Derek's injured area, he tenses, unsure of what to expect. The moment Diana's specialized appendages make contact, Derek gasps. A tingling sensation spreads through his body, unlike anything he's ever experienced. Diana's eyes widen in surprise. "Fascinating," she murmurs. "Your biology is responding in ways I never anticipated." As the treatment progresses, alarms begin to sound. The door slides open once more, revealing human and Nigerian military officials. Their expressions range from shock to intrigue as they take in the scene before them. "Stop the procedure immediately," a human colonel barks. "This interaction could have immense tactical applications." Diana hesitates, her hand still on Derek's injury. "I cannot abandon a patient mid-treatment," she insists. Derek, caught between relief and confusion, realizes the gravity of the situation. What began as a simple injury has escalated into a potential interstellar incident. As the room erupts into chaos, with officials arguing and medical alarms blaring, Derek makes a decision. He reaches out, grasping Diana's hand. "Keep going," he urges. "We need to see this through." As Diana resumes the treatment, Derek braces himself. He knows that whatever happens next will shape the future of human-Nigerian relations forever. The fate of two species now rests in the unlikely union of a human soldier and an alien nurse, their bodies connected in a healing embrace that defies all expectations. As Derek urges Diana to continue the treatment, the room erupts into chaos. Alarms blare, officials argue, and the air crackles with tension. Suddenly, the door flies open with a resounding bang, silencing the commotion. Dr. Zara strides in, her iridescent scales gleaming under the harsh lights. 4 piercing eyes scan the room, settling on Derek and Diana with laser-like intensity. "Cease all activity immediately." Dr. Zylof's voice cuts through the din like a scalpel. We have a situation of unprecedented scientific significance. Diana's hands freeze, still in contact with Derek's injury. The tingling sensation intensifies, spreading through his body like wildfire. He grits his teeth, fighting the urge to squirm under the scrutiny of so many eyes. Dr. Zyloff approaches, her tentacles waving in agitation. Preliminary scans show an extraordinary biochemical reaction occurring between the human and Nigean cellular structures. This could revolutionize interspecies medicine as we know it. Before anyone can react, Dr. Zyloff taps a command into her wrist device. A shimmering energy field springs to life, enveloping the entire room. Full quarantine protocol engaged. No one enters or leaves until we understand the extent of this phenomenon. Panic flashes across Derek's face. Wait, you can't just... His protests are drowned out by the sudden hum of machinery as a team of Nigean researchers floods the room, setting up monitoring equipment with practiced efficiency. Diana's grip on Derek tightens, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. "I'm sorry," she whispers, her melodic voice trembling. "I never intended for this to happen." Derek nods, swallowing hard. The pain in his groin has begun to subside, replaced by an odd tingling warmth that spreads through his entire body. He watches in amazement as the swelling visibly decreases before his eyes. Dr. Zyloff looms over them, her four eyes narrowed in concentration as she studies the readouts on a holographic display. Fascinating. The human's inflammation is receding at an accelerated rate, while the nurse is experiencing heightened neural activity and increased cellular regeneration. She turns to her team, mandibles clicking excitedly. "Prepare for a full spectrum of tests. We need to document every aspect of this interaction." Diana's tentacles curl protectively around Derek. "Dr. Zyloff, please. He's my patient, not a test subject." The chief medical officer's eyes flash dangerously. "Nurse Diana, you will comply with all research protocols. The potential applications of this discovery are too significant to ignore." As if on cue, a commotion erupts outside the quarantine field. Lieutenant Sarah Hawkins, flanked by a squad of human soldiers, attempts to push through the growing crowd of Nigean medical staff. "We demand immediate access to our soldier," Hawkins shouts, her voice muffled by the energy barrier. "This is a clear violation of interspecies medical protocols." Dr. Zyloff barely spares them a glance. "Your concerns are noted, Lieutenant. However, the current situation requires careful study before we can risk contamination." Derek's heart races as he realizes the gravity of the situation. What began as a simple training injury has spiraled into a potential diplomatic crisis. He locks eyes with Diana, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in her alien features. "What's happening to us?" he whispers, acutely aware of the changes coursing through his body. Diana's voice is low, meant only for his ears. "I don't know, but I promise I'll do everything I can to protect you." Their moment of connection is shattered as Dr. Zyloff approaches with a menacing array of instruments. "Now let's begin our first round of tests. This may cause some discomfort, but the data we gather could change the course of interspecies relations forever." Derek tenses, bracing himself for whatever comes next. As the first needle pierces his skin, he can't help but wonder if he's become a reluctant pioneer on the frontier of alien medicine, or a prisoner in a sterile laboratory of horrors. Outside the hospital, the situation deteriorates rapidly. News of the quarantine spreads like wildfire through the Nigean population. A crowd gathers, their angry voices rising in a cacophony of alien sounds. Signs bob above the throng, demanding the expulsion of all humans from Nigeria. General Kraz, a towering figure of military might, surveys the scene with grim satisfaction. He turns to his subordinates, mandibles clicking in anticipation. "Deploy containment units around the perimeter. No human leaves this facility until we have full control of the situation." Inside the quarantine zone, Derek endures a barrage of tests, each more invasive than the last. Blood samples, tissue biopsies, and neural scans blur together in a haze of discomfort and confusion. Diana remains by his side, her presence a small comfort in the clinical chaos. Dr. Zyloff's excitement grows with each new data point. "The potential applications are staggering," she mutters, more to herself than anyone else. enhanced healing, improved cognitive function, perhaps even a bridge between our two species on a cellular level. As the hours drag on, Derek feels his strength waning. The initial surge of energy from Diana's treatment gives way to exhaustion. He struggles to keep his eyes open, the world around him becoming a blur of alien faces and flashing holographic displays. Diana notices his deterioration and rounds on Dr. Zylov. Enough! Can't you see he needs rest? We're not lab specimens to be prodded indefinitely. Before the chief medical officer can respond, a new voice cuts through the tension. Colonel Marcus Steele's face appears on a large view screen, his expression a mask of nearly unleashed fury. Dr. Zylov, I'm initiating emergency diplomatic channels as we speak. The forced quarantine and experimentation on my soldier violate no less than 7 interspecies treaties. Release him immediately, or I'll have no choice but to withdraw all human personnel from Nigia. The Nigian doctor's eyes narrow, calculating the implications of the colonel's threat. After a moment of tense silence, she responds, Perhaps we can reach a compromise, Colonel. We'll release your soldier, but only if he agrees to participate in a joint human-Nigian research program. The potential benefits to both our species are too great to ignore. Derek, barely conscious, feels the weight of 2 worlds settling on his shoulders. As darkness creeps into the edges of his vision, he hears Diana's voice, distant but determined. Whatever happens, I'll be right here with you. We're in this together now. With those words echoing in his mind, Derek slips into unconsciousness, unaware that his next decision could alter the course of interstellar relations forever. Derek's consciousness slowly returned, his mind swimming through a haze of disorientation. The harsh lights of the quarantine room assaulted his vision as he blinked awake, struggling to focus on his surroundings. He became acutely aware of Diana's presence beside him, her hand still resting on his now-healed injury. What happened? He mumbled, his voice hoarse and unfamiliar to his own ears. Diana's eyes widened as she looked at him, her expression a mixture of concern and fascination. Derek, your skin... He glanced down at his arms, his breath catching in his throat. Faint luminescent patterns danced across his skin, pulsing with a soft blue glow that mirrored the natural bioluminescence of the Nigians. Panic surged through him as he realized the extent of the changes his body had undergone. Diana, you're changing too, he whispered, reaching out to touch her arm. Where his fingers made contact, her typically blue-tinted skin took on a more human-like pigmentation. Before either of them could process the implications of their transformation, Dr. Sylov's voice cut through their moment of mutual discovery. Extraordinary, she exclaimed, her 4 eyes gleaming with almost unchecked excitement. The cellular interaction between your species is far more profound than we initially hypothesized. The Nigian doctor tapped rapidly on her wrist device, and a fine mist began to disperse throughout the room. A stabilizing compound, she explained, noticing Derek and Diana's alarmed expressions. It should help regulate the ongoing physiological changes. As the mist settled around them, Derek felt an odd tingling sensation spread across his skin. He shifted uncomfortably, suddenly hyper-aware of every point of contact between his body and the examination table. Diana seemed equally affected, her tentacles curling and uncurling in an agitated manner. Dr. Zylov, Diana began, her voice strained. I don't think... Her words were cut short as a young male Nigian burst into the room, his eyes fixed on Diana with an intensity that made Derek instinctively tense. Doctor, the latest test results, he announced, thrusting a datapad towards Dr. Zylov. Ah, Zorn, Dr. Zylov acknowledged, taking the pad. What have you found? As the doctor became engrossed in the data, Derek noticed Zorn's gaze lingering on Diana. The young Nigian's mandibles clicked in what Derek interpreted as agitation, and he felt an inexplicable surge of protectiveness towards the nurse. Outside the quarantine room, the sound of raised voices and hurried footsteps grew louder. Through the transparent barrier, Derek could see a flurry of activity as medical staff and security personnel rushed past. The tension in the air was palpable, even through the quarantine field. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Dr. Zylov's head snapped up from the datapad, her eyes widening in alarm. Containment breach, she hissed, turning to her team. Evacuate immediately. In the chaos that followed, Derek found himself alone with Diana as the room emptied. The quarantine field flickered and died, leaving them exposed to the increasingly hostile environment outside. Emergency lights bathed the room in an eerie red glow as the hospital's security systems engaged, sealing off the wing. We need to get out of here, Derek said, struggling to sit up. The compound in the air seemed to be intensifying, making his skin hypersensitive. Every movement sent waves of sensation coursing through his body. Diana nodded, her own breathing labored. The hospital will be in lockdown. We'll have to find an alternative exit. As they moved towards the door, Derek became acutely aware of Diana's proximity. The attraction he had felt towards her earlier had amplified tenfold, making it difficult to focus on the task at hand. He could see the same struggle reflected in her eyes. Diana, he started, his voice low and urgent. What's happening to us? She shook her head, her tentacles brushing against his arm in a way that sent shivers down his spine. I don't know, but we can't stay here. The air supply, Dr. Zyloff's compounds. Understanding dawned on Derek. The longer they remained, the more affected they would become by the experimental substances lingering in the air. With a nod of drive, he pushed open the door, and they stepped out into the deserted corridor. The sounds of chaos echoed through the hospital. Distant shouts and the occasional muffled explosions suggested that the situation outside had deteriorated significantly. Derek's military training kicked in as he assessed their options. We need to find a secure communication terminal, he said, keeping his voice low. Contact my superiors, get an extraction team. Diana's hand brushed against his as they moved down the corridor, sending a jolt of electricity through him. The staff lounge on the third floor, she whispered. It has an emergency comm link. As they made their way through the maze-like corridors of the hospital, Derek couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The shadows seemed to move at the corners of his vision, and more than once, he thought he heard footsteps echoing behind them. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a group of Nigen security officers. For a moment, both parties froze in surprise. Then chaos erupted. Derek reacted on instinct, pulling Diana behind a nearby supply cart as the officers raised their weapons. Stop, one of the officers shouted. By order of General Kraz, all humans are to be detained. Derek's mind raced, trying to process the implications of the officer's words. What had happened while they were in quarantine? How had the situation escalated so quickly? As energy bolts sizzled past their makeshift cover, Derek knew they had no choice but to fight their way out. He looked at Diana, seeing the fear and willpower in her eyes. In that moment, despite the danger and uncertainty surrounding them, he felt an unshakable connection to this alien being. Together, he asked, his hand finding hers. Diana nodded, her tentacles curling around his wrist. Together. With that, they sprang into action, their newly altered physiologies working in perfect synchronization as they faced the challenges ahead. The hospital corridors stretched before them, a labyrinth of danger and uncertainty. But Derek knew that as long as Diana was by his side, they stood a chance of surviving the chaos that had engulfed Nigia. Their way out of this chaotic situation. As they moved through the dimly lit corridor, Derek's enhanced senses picked up on a faint, rhythmic sound coming from behind a nearby wall panel. Wait, he whispered, pulling Diana to a stop. Do you hear that? Diana's tentacles twitched as she focused her hearing. It sounds like machinery? Derek nodded, running his hand along the wall until he felt a slight vibration. He pressed against the panel, and to their surprise, it slid open, revealing a hidden passage. Without hesitation, they ducked inside, the panel closing silently behind them. The narrow corridor led them to a concealed laboratory, bathed in a soft blue light. As they entered, a tall, slender Nigean female with iridescent scales turned to face them, her four eyes widening in surprise. You must be the human and the nurse everyone's looking for, she said, her voice calm despite the chaos outside. I'm Dr. Lyra, senior biologist. I've been observing Dr. Zyloff's experiments, and I believe I can help you. Derek and Diana exchanged wary glances, their newfound connection allowing them to silently communicate their shared apprehension. Diana stepped forward, her medical training kicking in as she assessed the scientist. "Help us how, exactly?" Diana asked, her tentacles curling protectively around Derek's arm. Dr. Lyra moved to a nearby workstation, retrieving two sleek, metallic bands. These prototype devices are designed to regulate interspecies biological interactions. They should help stabilize your condition. Derek eyed the devices skeptically. "And we're just supposed to trust you?" "You don't have much choice," Dr. Lyra replied, her mandibles clicking softly. "Your bodies are continuing to change. Without intervention, the process could become irreversible or even fatal." A distant explosion rocked the lab, sending equipment rattling on the shelves. Derek's military instincts flared, reminding him of the immediate danger they faced. "All right," he said, extending his arm. "Let's do this." Dr. Lyra deftly secured the bands around their wrists. As soon as the cool metal touched their skin, Derek felt a tingling sensation spread through his body. The glowing patterns on his skin dimmed, and beside him, Diana's blue tint began to even out. However, as the physical changes stabilized, Derek became acutely aware of Diana's presence in his mind. Her thoughts and emotions washed over him in waves, intensifying the connection they had been developing. "What's happening?" Diana gasped, her eyes locked with Derek's. Dr. Lyra looked between them, her expression a mixture of fascination and concern. "Interesting. It seems the devices have amplified your telepathic bond. This wasn't an anticipated effect." Before they could process this new development, alarms blared throughout the hospital. The lab screens flickered to life, displaying scenes of chaos as patients and staff fled, collapsing sections of the building. "Vex," Derek growled, recognizing the handiwork of the anti-human terrorist. "He's targeting the life support systems." Diana's mind raced alongside his, her knowledge of the hospital layout flooding into his consciousness. "We need to get to the central control room. It's our only chance to restore power and save everyone trapped inside." Dr. Lyra grabbed a small bag of equipment. "I'm coming with you. My expertise might be needed if Vex has deployed any biological weapons." As they exited the hidden lab, Derek's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of approaching footsteps. He pulled Diana and Dr. Lyra into an alcove just as a group of Nigean security officers rushed past, their weapons drawn. General Kraz must have sent them, Diana thought, the words echoing in Derek's mind. Derek nodded, formulating a plan. "We'll need to be careful. We're not just avoiding Vex's terrorists now." They moved through the hospital's winding corridors, relying on Diana's intimate knowledge of the layout and Derek's tactical skills to avoid detection. The prototype devices on their wrists pulsed with energy, struggling to maintain stability as their bodies continued to adapt. As they rounded a corner, they came upon a group of injured civilians, both human and Nigean, trapped behind a pile of debris. Derek's training and Diana's medical instincts kicked in simultaneously, their synchronization allowing them to work seamlessly to clear the rubble and assess the wounded. "We can't leave them here," Diana said, though Derek had already reached the same conclusion. As they worked to free the civilians, Dr. Lyra kept watch, her scales shifting colors to blend with the surroundings. Just as they cleared the last of the debris, she hissed a warning. "Movement on both sides." Derek spun around, positioning himself protectively in front of the injured civilians. To his left, Vex emerged with a squad of terrorists, each carrying what appeared to be experimental bioweapons. To his right, a team of Nigean Special Ops soldiers appeared, their armor bearing General Kraz's insignia. The civilians huddled behind them, terror evident in their eyes. Diana's hand found Derek's, their shared thoughts racing to find a solution. The central control room was tantalizingly close, just beyond the standoff. Suddenly, the prototype devices on their wrists began to emit a high-pitched whine. Dr. Lyra's eyes widened in alarm. "The devices are becoming unstable," she warned. "The stress of the situation is triggering an unpredictable biological reaction." Derek could feel the change coursing through his body, his skin tingling with hardly restrained energy. Beside him, Diana's tentacles writhed with an otherworldly glow. The air around them seemed to shimmer, causing both Vex's terrorists and Kraz's soldiers to take an involuntary step back. As weapons were raised and tensions reached a breaking point, a low rumble reverberated through the floor. Cracks began to spiderweb across the ceiling, showering them with dust and debris. "The building's structural integrity is failing," Dr. Lyra shouted over the growing cacophony of creaking metal and shattering glass. Derek and Diana locked eyes, their minds perfectly in sync. In that moment, they knew that their next action would determine not just their fate, but the future of human-Nigen relations. The floor groaned beneath them, threatening to give way at any second. With time running out and lives hanging in the balance, Derek took a deep breath, ready to make his move. The fate of the hospital, the civilians, and possibly the entire planet now rested on what he and Diana would do next. With time running out and lives hanging in the balance, Derek took a deep breath, ready to make his move. In a fluid motion, he reached for his wrist, activating his military-grade personal shield generator. The device, typically reserved for combat situations, hummed to life, expanding rapidly to encompass not only Derek and Diana, but also Dr. Lyra and the injured civilians huddled behind them. A shimmering dome of energy enveloped the group, its sudden appearance catching both Vex's terrorists and General Kraz's special ops team off guard. The hostiles stumbled back, momentarily disoriented by the unexpected barrier. "Diana, lead the way to the control room," Derek instructed, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. As they moved, the prototype devices on Derek and Diana's wrists began to emit a low-frequency pulse. The sound resonated with the shield generator, creating an unexpected interaction. The energy field fluctuated, its color shifting from a steady blue to a swirling pattern of iridescent hues. The unstable energy rippled through the group, triggering a series of startling biological reactions. The injured civilians gasped as their wounds began to close at an unprecedented rate. Broken bones knitted together, lacerations sealed shut, and bruises faded before their eyes. Diana felt a surge of strength course through her body, her movements becoming more fluid and precise. She glanced at Dr. Lyra, noticing the scientist's scales shimmer with newfound vitality. "Derek," Diana called out, her thoughts effortlessly reaching his mind. "Something's happening to us." Outside the shield, the effect was reversed. Vex's terrorists and Kraz's soldiers staggered, their energy visibly draining. Weapons malfunctioned in their hands, sparking and sputtering uselessly. The hostiles' coordination faltered, their movements becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. Taking advantage of the confusion, Derek guided the group through the chaos. They navigated the crumbling corridors, dodging falling debris and leaping over widening cracks in the floor. The central control room loomed ahead, a beacon of hope in the collapsing hospital. As they reached the door, their elation turned to dismay. A sophisticated biometric lock barred their entry, its display indicating it was key to Dr. Zyloff's unique Nigen physiology. "We're locked out," Dr. Lyra exclaimed, her mandibles clicking in frustration. Diana stepped forward, her tentacles curling with dedication. "Maybe not. My biology has changed. It might be enough to fool the system." She pressed her hand against the scanner, holding her breath as it analyzed her altered physiology. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft chime, the lock disengaged and the door slid open. Inside the control room, Derek and Dr. Lyra raced to the main console. Their fingers flew over the controls, working to restore the hospital's failing life support systems. As they worked, a disturbing discovery flashed across the screens. "This is worse than we thought," Dr. Lyra said, her voice tight with concern. "Vex didn't just target the hospital. He's activated a planet-wide biological weapon designed to attack human DNA." Derek's mind reeled at the implications. "How do we stop it?" Dr. Lyra's eyes darted between Derek and Diana, her scientific mind racing. "Your hybrid physiology, it could be the key. We might be able to synthesize a counteragent using your altered cellular structure." "But," Diana prompted, sensing the scientist's hesitation. "But it would require a complete biological merger between you two," Dr. Lyra explained. "The process would be irreversible. You'd be forever changed on a cellular level." The weight of the decision settled over Derek and Diana. They locked eyes, their telepathic bond thrumming with a mix of fear, drive, and an undeniable connection that had grown between them. Before they could respond, the room shook violently. Alarms blared, warning of the spreading bioweapon and the hospital's imminent structural failure. Time was running out. Outside the control room, Lieutenant Hawkins and her team fought through the chaos, shocked to find the area littered with incapacitated hostiles. As they prepared to breach the control room, Hawkins received an urgent communication from Colonel Steele. "Lieutenant, the situation has escalated," Steele's voice crackled through the comm. "The Nigean High Council is considering a planet-wide purge to eliminate all human presence on Nigia. They fear the spread of Vex's weapon." Inside the control room, oblivious to the larger political storm brewing, Derek and Diana stood at the precipice of their decision. The fate of two species hung in the balance, dependent on their willingness to sacrifice their individual identities for the greater good. "Diana," Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper, "if we do this, there's no going back. We won't be fully human or Nigean anymore." Diana's tentacles intertwined with Derek's fingers, her thoughts merging with his. "But we'll be something new, something that could bridge the gap between our species." As the hospital crumbled around them and the bioweapon continued its insidious spread, Derek and Diana faced the most important decision of their lives. The next few moments would determine not just their fate, but the future of human-Nigian relations and the survival of both species on Nigia. Nigia. With a shared glance, Derek and Diana reached an unspoken agreement. Their hands clasped tightly, anchoring each other as they faced the monumental decision before them. "We'll do it," Derek said, his voice steady despite the tremors shaking the room. Diana nodded, her tentacles curling with determination. "Together." Dr. Lyra sprang into action, her nimble fingers dancing across the console as she prepared the equipment for the unprecedented procedure. "This will be intensely painful," she warned, her mandibles clicking with concern. "Your bodies will be completely reconfigured at the cellular level." As Dr. Lyra worked, the room filled with the hum of machinery powering up. Derek and Diana positioned themselves in the center of the control room, standing face to face. The prototype devices on their wrists pulsed in sync, as if sensing the impending transformation. "Initiating the merger," Dr. Lyra announced, activating the final sequence. A shimmering field of energy erupted from the surrounding equipment, enveloping Derek and Diana in a cocoon of swirling light. The sensation began as a tingling across their skin, quickly intensifying to a searing burn that penetrated to their very core. Derek gritted his teeth, fighting against the urge to cry out. Diana's tentacles writhed in agony, but her eyes remained locked with his. Their shared pain flowed through their mental link, each bearing half the burden. As the process continued, their bodies began to change visibly. The luminescent patterns on Derek's skin brightened to an almost blinding intensity, while Diana's blue pigmentation shifted, taking on a more human-like tone. Their forms became fluid, edges blurring as human and Nigean physiologies merged and reconfigured. Outside the control room, Lieutenant Hawkins and her team arrived just in time to witness the extraordinary spectacle through the windows. The corridor was bathed in pulsating light that spilled from the room, casting long shadows that danced erratically on the walls. "Secure the perimeter," Hawkins ordered, her voice tight with awe and apprehension. "No one gets in or out until we know what we're dealing with." Inside, the merger reached its peak intensity. Derek and Diana's individual forms became indistinct, merging into a swirling vortex of cellular material. Dr. Lyra monitored the process intently, her eyes darting between the displays and the metamorphosing figures before her. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the hospital. The immense energy generated by the merger was overloading the building's systems. Power fluctuated wildly, causing lights to flicker and equipment to spark. In the confusion, Vex, who had been temporarily incapacitated earlier, managed to regain access to the hospital's communication systems. His voice crackled over the intercom, filled with malice and triumph. "People of Nigia, hear the truth. The humans have unleashed a bioweapon upon us, seeking to eradicate our species. Rise up and defend your world." Dr. Lyra's attention snapped to a new set of readings on her console. "The energy signature from the merger," she muttered, her voice rising with excitement. "It's neutralizing the bioweapon." The shimmering field surrounding Derek and Diana expanded, pushing beyond the confines of the control room. As it spread through the hospital, injured humans and Nigians caught in its path began to recover at an astonishing rate. Wounds closed, bones knitted, and the insidious effects of Vex's weapon were purged from their systems. Recognizing the potential of this development, Dr. Lyra's fingers flew across the console, reconfiguring the hospital's communication array. If I can broadcast this energy signature planet-wide, we might be able to neutralize the entire bioweapon threat, she explained to Hawkins, who had cautiously entered the room with her team. As Dr. Lyra worked, the merger between Derek and Diana entered its final, most volatile phase. Their combined form pulsed and shifted, taking on characteristics of both species in configurations never before seen. The energy field around them intensified, threatening to overload the already strained hospital systems. "I need more power for the broadcast," Dr. Lyra shouted over the cacophony of alarms and groaning metal, but diverting it could destabilize the merger containment field. Hawkins surveyed the chaos around her, weighing the risks. "Do it," she commanded. "We might not get another chance." As Dr. Lyra rerouted power to the communication array, the room began to shake violently. Equipment cracked and sparked, and the swirling vortex that was Derek and Diana fluctuated dangerously. Just as Dr. Lyra activated the planet-wide broadcast, a deafening explosion rocked the building. General Kraz, having received reports of the spreading energy field, had ordered an airstrike on the hospital. The pulse of neutralizing energy surged outward from the hospital, racing across the surface of Nigia. In its wake, Vex's bioweapon disintegrated, and the immediate threat to both human and Nigian populations dissipated. Inside the control room, the merger containment field collapsed. The swirling vortex of energy that had been Derek and Diana began to separate, resolving into two distinct but profoundly altered forms. As the dust settled and the alarms fell silent, Derek and Diana stood facing each other, their bodies transformed. Derek's skin retained a faint luminescence, while Diana's tentacles now bore intricate, human-like patterns. Their eyes, when they opened, reflected a depth of understanding that bridged both their species. The room fell silent as everyone present tried to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. The immediate crisis had been averted, but the consequences of this unprecedented merger were yet to be fully understood. Dr. Lyra approached the pair cautiously, her scientific curiosity warring with concern. "How do you feel?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Derek and Diana turned to face her, their movements perfectly synchronized. When they spoke, their voices overlapped in an eerie harmony. "We are more," they said. Lieutenant Hawkins stepped forward, her posture tense. "What exactly does that mean?" Before they could respond, the communication array crackled to life. Colonel Steele's voice filled the room, tight with urgency. "Hawkins, report. What's happening down there? We're getting readings of some kind of energy pulse spreading across the planet, and the Nigian High Council is in an uproar." As Hawkins moved to respond, Derek and Diana exchanged a look of silent understanding. Their transformation had only just begun, and its impact would reach far beyond the walls of this hospital. The future of human-Nigian relations now rested in their altered hands. Hands, their voices, still echoing with that eerie harmony, filled the room. "We are more than we were, yet still ourselves," Derek said, his skin pulsing with a soft, bioluminescent glow. Diana's tentacles curled and uncurled, now adorned with intricate, human-like patterns. "Our minds are clearer, our senses sharper," she added. Before anyone could respond, the building shook violently. The sound of distant explosions echoed through the corridors. "We need to move," Lieutenant Hawkins ordered, her training kicking in. "This place isn't safe anymore." Dr. Lyra quickly gathered what equipment she could, her mandibles clicking rapidly as she worked. "I need to run more tests," she insisted. "The implications of this merger are staggering." As if to underscore her point, Derek suddenly stiffened, his eyes going wide. "Someone's coming," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "A lot of someones." Diana nodded, her tentacles twitching. "I can sense them too. They're not friendly." Hawkins moved to the door, weapon at the ready. "Looks like our time's up. We need an exit strategy now. The lieutenant's mind raced, recalling the hospital's layout from her earlier briefings. There's a network of maintenance tunnels beneath us. If we can reach them, we might be able to slip away unnoticed. As the group hurried from the control room, the hospital's intercom system crackled to life. General Kraz's voice boomed through the corridors, thick with almost unchecked rage. Attention all forces. Secure the human Nigean aberrations at all costs. They are to be captured alive for study. Any resistance is to be met with lethal force. The group quickened their pace, following Hawkins as she led them through a maze of corridors. The sounds of booted feet and shouted orders grew closer with each passing moment. They reached a maintenance hatch just as the first shots rang out behind them. Hawkins wrenched it open, ushering the others inside. Go, go, she urged, returning fire to cover their retreat. The tunnel was dark and cramped, forcing them to move single file. Derek and Diana took the lead, their altered physiologies allowing them to navigate the darkness with unexpected ease. Left here, Derek called out, his skin glowing faintly to illuminate the path. Diana's tentacles brushed against the walls, sensing vibrations. There's a group above us, moving parallel, she warned. They pressed on, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter as they delved deeper into the tunnel network. After what felt like hours of tense silence broken only by their labored breathing, they emerged into the cool night air. The group found themselves in a sprawling botanical garden, its alien flora a riot of colors even in the dim starlight. Massive leaves drooped overhead, while bioluminescent flowers pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm. As they moved through the garden, Derek and Diana's presence seemed to agitate the plant life. Vines recoiled from their touch, while other plants reached out with quivering tendrils. Fascinating, Dr. Lyra murmured, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. The flora is reacting to your altered biology. Hawkins cut her off with a sharp gesture. Save the observations for later, Doctor. We need to keep moving. They pushed on through the dense foliage, always alert for signs of pursuit. As they walked, Derek and Diana found themselves moving in perfect synchronization, their steps and movements mirrored with uncanny precision. I can hear your thoughts, Diana said softly, her tentacles curling around Derek's arm. He nodded, a small smile playing on his luminescent features. And I can feel your emotions. It's like we're connected on a level I never imagined possible. Their moment of connection was interrupted by a sudden burst of activity in the city beyond the garden's edge. Sirens wailed and searchlights cut through the night sky. They're widening the search, Hawkins observed grimly. We can't stay here. Dr. Lyra's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of her growing anxiety. Where can we go? The entire planet will be looking for us soon. Hawkins' eyes narrowed as she scanned their surroundings. In the distance, barely visible against the starry sky, she spotted the silhouette of a familiar structure. There, she said, pointing. That's an old research outpost. It's been abandoned for years, but it might have supplies we can use. More importantly, it'll give us a place to regroup and figure out our next move. As they set off towards the outpost, the city behind them erupted into a cacophony of noise and light. The manhunt had begun in earnest, and Derek and Diana found themselves at the center of a storm that threatened to engulf not just them, but the entire fragile balance between humans and Nigeans on this alien world. The outpost loomed before them, a silent sentinel in the night. As they approached, Derek and Diana shared a look of understanding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their merged biology a symbol of the unity they now embodied. Hawkins raised her weapon, scanning for any signs of life or active security systems. Stay alert, she warned. We don't know what we might find inside. With cautious steps, the group approached the entrance, ready to face whatever awaited them in this next chapter of their extraordinary journey. The group entered the abandoned research outpost cautiously, weapons drawn and senses alert. As they moved through the dimly lit corridors, Derek and Diana's enhanced perception proved invaluable, allowing them to navigate potential hazards and avoid triggering any dormant security systems. Clear, Derek whispered, his skin pulsing, with a soft bioluminescence that provided just enough light to see by. Diana's tentacles brushed against the walls, sensing for vibrations or hidden passages. "There's a large room ahead," she reported. "It feels different." Lieutenant Hawkins nodded, gesturing for the others to follow. They entered what appeared to be the outpost main laboratory, a cavernous space filled with dust-covered equipment and long-abandoned experiments. Dr. Lyra immediately began examining the various instruments and data terminals, her mandibles clicking excitedly. "Some of this equipment is still functional," she announced. "With a bit of work, I might be able to continue my analysis of Derek and Diana's transformation." As the Nyan scientists set to work, Hawkins secured the perimeter, setting up makeshift alarms using scavenged parts. Derek and Diana, meanwhile, found themselves drawn to a large window overlooking the alien landscape. The first hints of dawn were beginning to paint the sky, casting an otherworldly glow across the undulating terrain. As they watched, Derek noticed something peculiar about their reflections in the glass. "Diana, look," he said softly, gesturing to the window. Their images seemed to shimmer and shift, blending seamlessly with the background. As they focused on this new ability, their bodies began to take on the colors and textures of their surroundings. "Incredible," Diana breathed, her tentacles rippling with excitement. "We can camouflage ourselves." Their discovery came just in time. In the distance, they could see the first signs of approaching search parties, their vehicles kicking up clouds of dust as they combed the area. "Lieutenant," Derek called out, his voice urgent but controlled, "we've got company coming." Hawkins joined them at the window, assessing the situation with a trained eye. "We can't stay here," she decided. "We need to make for the spaceport. It's our best chance of getting off-world." Dr. Lyra looked up from her work, mandibles twitching anxiously. "But my research—" "Pack what you can carry," Hawkins ordered. "We move in 5 minutes." As the group hastily gathered supplies, Derek and Diana practiced their newfound camouflage abilities. By the time they were ready to depart, the couple had mastered the basics of blending into their environment. They slipped out of the outpost just as the first rays of sunlight crested the horizon. With Derek and Diana leading the way, their enhanced senses alert for any sign of danger, the group began their perilous journey towards the Nigian spaceport. Their progress was slow and cautious, every step carefully chosen to avoid detection. Derek and Diana's camouflage proved invaluable, allowing them to scout ahead and warn the others of potential threats. As they traveled, Dr. Lyra continued her observations, recording data on a portable device she'd salvaged from the outpost. "The compound produced by your merged DNA is becoming more potent," she informed Derek and Diana during a brief rest. "I believe it may have properties that could enhance interspecies empathy and communication." The Nigian scientist's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense concentration. "I've decided to call it Harmony Serum. With more study, it could be crucial in diffusing tensions between humans and Nigians." Hawkins, ever practical, interjected, "That's assuming we survive long enough to share your findings, Doctor." As they neared the outskirts of a Nigian settlement, the group encountered an unexpected obstacle. The path ahead was blocked by a massive tangle of vegetation, dominated by a species of carnivorous plant native to Nigia. "Nigen trap," Dr. Lyra whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and fear. "Highly dangerous to both humans and Nigians. Its sensory tendrils can detect our body heat in motion from meters away." Derek and Diana exchanged a look of silent understanding. Without a word, they stepped forward, their bodies shimmering as they activated their camouflage. To everyone's surprise, the Nigen trap showed no reaction to their presence. Its tendrils waved lazily in the air, completely ignoring the hybrid couple as they carefully navigated through its deadly embrace. "Our mixed biology must be confusing its sensory mechanisms," Diana realized, her tentacles curling with excitement. Hawkins' eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation. "Can you trigger its hunting response without putting yourselves in danger?" she asked, the beginnings of a plan forming in her mind. Derek nodded, understanding the lieutenant's intent. "I think so. Ready, Diana." Together they began to weave through the Nigian trap's tendrils, deliberately brushing against its sensitive surfaces. The plant began to stir, its movements becoming more agitated with each passing second. Suddenly, the Nigen trap released a powerful burst of pheromones, filling the air with a sickly sweet scent. The effect on the local wildlife was immediate and dramatic. Creatures of all sizes emerged from hiding, drawn by the promise of an easy meal. In the ensuing chaos, the group slipped past the distracted Nigean patrols, making significant progress toward the spaceport. However, their journey was a long way to go. As they crested a ridge overlooking their destination, the air before them shimmered and distorted. A sleek, otherworldly vessel materialized directly in their path, its design unlike anything they had ever seen. The ship's hull bore the insignia of the Galactic Harmony Initiative, a symbol that represented hope and unity to some, and dangerous idealism to others. As a hatch opened and a diverse crew emerged, led by a distinguished human in diplomatic attire, Derek and Diana realized that their transformation had set in motion events that would reshape not just their own lives, but the future of human-Nigean relations, and perhaps the entire galaxy. The dawn of a new era was breaking over Nikia, and they stood at its epicenter, their merged biology a living testament to the potential for harmony between different species. What came next would depend on their choices, their persistence, and their ability to navigate the complex web of politics, science, and conflict that awaited them. The diplomatic figure from the Galactic Harmony Initiative vessel stepped forward, his eyes widening as he took in the sight of Derek and Diana's transformed appearance. "I'm Ambassador Jareth," he said, his voice calm despite the tension in the air. "We've been tracking your situation. It seems we arrived just in time." Before anyone could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles cut through the air. Hawkins spun around, her weapon raised. "We've got incoming. Looks like the search parties have found us." Ambassador Jareth nodded briskly. "We need to move. Our ship is equipped with advanced cloaking technology. We can get you off-planet undetected." As the group hurried towards the GHI vessel, Derek and Diana shared a look of understanding. Their journey was just getting started. The ship's hatch sealed behind them with a soft hiss, and within moments they were airborne. The interior of the ship was a marvel of advanced technology, sleek and efficient. As they lifted off, the vessel's cloaking engaged, rendering them invisible to Nigia's orbital defenses. Through the viewports, Derek and Diana watched as the planet's surface receded, giving way to the vast expanse of space. Ambassador Jareth led them to the ship's command center, where a diverse crew of humans and aliens worked in seamless coordination. "We've been monitoring the situation on Nigia," he explained. "The conflict between humans and Nigians has reached a critical point. Your unique condition may be the key to resolving it." Dr. Lyra's mandibles clicked rapidly as she processed this information. "The Harmony Serum," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "If we can synthesize it on a larger scale—" "Exactly," Jareth nodded, "but we need to act fast. Our intelligence suggests that an extremist faction, led by a Nigean named Vex, is pushing for full-scale war against the human settlements." As the ship entered Niga's atmosphere once more, Derek and Diana prepared themselves for the mission ahead. They donned specialized environmental suits designed to work with their hybrid physiology, while Hawkins and Dr. Lyra geared up alongside 2 GHI operatives. The ship touched down in a secluded area on the outskirts of the capital city. As the hatch opened, the chaos engulfing the city became immediately apparent. Plumes of smoke rose from various districts, and the sounds of energy weapons and explosions echoed through the streets. Derek and Diana took point, their enhanced senses alerting them to potential dangers. "This way," Derek said, his skin glowing faintly to illuminate the path. "I'm picking up a concentration of human and Nigean life signs 2 blocks east." As they moved through the war-torn streets, Diana's tentacles brushed against the rubble, sensing vibrations and energy signatures. "There's a group trapped ahead," she called out, "in that collapsed building." Without hesitation, Derek and Diana rushed forward, their hybrid strength allowing them to clear debris that would have stymied others. As they worked to free the trapped civilians, a mix of humans and Nigeans, something unexpected occurred. Upon physical contact with Derek and Diana, the injured survivors experienced a sudden surge of empathy and understanding. Humans and Nigeans who moments ago had been at odds now looked at each other with newfound compassion. Dr. Lyra observed this phenomenon with fascination. "It's the Harmony Serum," she realized. "Their touch is triggering a localized effect." Working quickly, she used samples from Derek and Diana to synthesize a batch of the serum, loading it into specially designed aerosol dispensers. As they continued through the city, the team used the Harmony serum to diffuse smaller conflicts they encountered. However, their ultimate goal lay ahead, the central communications hub, where they planned to broadcast a message of peace to the entire planet. As they approached the hub, they encountered a heavily fortified barricade manned by Vex's anti-human forces. The barricade bristled with advanced energy shields and weapon systems, making a frontal assault impossible. Derek and Diana exchanged a glance, their hybrid minds working in tandem to formulate a plan. "We can infiltrate," Diana said, her tentacles rippling with persistence. "Our camouflage abilities should get us through undetected." Hawkins nodded, understanding the plan without need for further explanation. "We'll create a diversion," she said, gesturing to the GHI operatives. "Draw their attention while you two get inside." As Hawkins and her team launched their diversionary attack, Derek and Diana activated their camouflage abilities. Their bodies shimmered, taking on the colors and textures of their surroundings. Moving with preternatural grace, they slipped past the enemy lines, releasing small doses of Harmony serum as they went. The effect on Vex's troops was immediate. Confusion and disorientation spread through their ranks, weakening their willpower and creating gaps in their defenses. Derek and Diana reached the control center of the barricade undetected. With a burst of hybrid strength, they overpowered the guards and disabled the energy shields. The barricade fell, allowing Hawkins and the others to push through. But as they secured the communications hub, they found that Vex had already taken control. His voice, filled with anti-human rhetoric, boomed across the planet's communication networks. And there, in the center of the room, stood Vex himself, his body enhanced with stolen experimental technology that rivaled Derek and Diana's hybrid abilities. As Vex turned to face them, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of hatred and triumph, Derek and Diana braced themselves for the confrontation that would determine the fate of two species and perhaps the entire galaxy. The confrontation with Vex was intense and chaotic. Energy weapons flared, illuminating the room with bursts of searing light. Derek and Diana moved in perfect synchronization, their hybrid abilities allowing them to anticipate and counter Vex's augmented attacks. As the battle raged, Dr. Lyra worked frantically at the communications console, preparing to broadcast the Harmony serum's effect across the planet. Hawkins and the GHI operatives provided covering fire, keeping Vex's reinforcements at bay. In a moment of desperation, Vex unleashed a powerful energy surge from his enhanced body. Derek and Diana, sensing the danger, interposed themselves between the blast and their allies. Their bodies glowed with an intense light as they absorbed the energy, their merged DNA reacting in ways no one could have predicted. With a final push, Dr. Lyra activated the broadcast. The Harmony serum, amplified by the energy Derek and Diana had absorbed, pulsed outward in a wave of light and sound that engulfed the entire planet. As the energy wave subsided, Derek and Diana collapsed to the floor, their bodies still glowing faintly. The room fell silent, the fighting ceased, and even Vex stood motionless, his face a mask of confusion. Hawkins was the first to recover. "Secure the area," she barked, snapping the GHI operatives into action. They quickly subdued Vex and his remaining forces, who offered little resistance in their disoriented state. Dr. Lyra rushed to Derek and Diana's side, her mandibles clicking rapidly as she assessed their condition. "We need to move them to a secure location," she said urgently. "Their vital signs are erratic." With Hawkins' help, they carried the unconscious couple to a nearby room, sealing it off from potential threats. As Dr. Lyra set up makeshift medical equipment, reports began flooding in from across the planet. "It's working," one of the GHI operatives announced, monitoring the incoming data. "The fighting is stopping. People are helping each other?" Hawkins allowed herself a moment of relief before refocusing on the immediate situation. "What's their status, Doctor?" she asked, gesturing to Derek and Diana. Dr. Lyra's compound eyes flickered with concern. "Unstable, but fascinating. Their hybrid physiology is undergoing rapid changes. Look at their skin." As they watched, Derek and Diana's skin shifted, alternating between human tones and the bioluminescent patterns characteristic of Nigens. It seemed to react to the ambient light, adjusting for optimal camouflage even in their unconscious state. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Lyra murmured, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding her concern. "It's as if their bodies are trying to find a perfect balance between human and Nigean traits." A commotion outside drew their attention. Hawkins moved to investigate, her weapon at the ready. She returned moments later, her expression a mix of disbelief and cautious optimism. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "General Kraz just contacted Colonel Steele. He's calling for a ceasefire." Dr. Lyra's mandibles clicked in surprise. The broadcast must have affected him too. This could be the breakthrough we've been hoping for. Their moment of hope was short-lived. Alarms blared from Dr. Lyra's medical equipment, drawing their attention back to Derek and Diana. The couple's bodies were convulsing, their skin flickering rapidly between human and Nigen characteristics. "Their systems are going haywire," Dr. Lyra explained, her voice tight with urgency. "The changes to their physiology are too rapid, too extreme. If we can't stabilize them—" She left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. Hawkins set her jaw, dedication etched on her face. "What do you need, Doctor?" Dr. Lyra's compound eyes darted back and forth as she thought rapidly. "A specialized chamber," she said finally. "Something that can recreate the conditions of their initial merger. It might provide the stable environment their bodies need to complete this transformation safely." "Can you build it?" Hawkins asked. The Nigen scientist's mandibles clicked uncertainly. "Possibly, but I'll need help. And materials. Rare ones, found only in specific locations on Nigia." Hawkins nodded, already formulating a plan. "I'll organize a retrieval mission. We'll get you what you need." As if on cue, a message came through from the GHI ship in orbit. Ambassador Jarrett's voice crackled over the comm system. "Lieutenant Hawkins, Dr. Lyra, what's your status? We're picking up some very unusual readings from your location." Hawkins quickly briefed the ambassador on the situation. There was a moment of silence before Jareth responded, his voice grave. "I'm sending down Dr. Elix to assist. He's our top xenobiologist. If anyone can help stabilize Derek and Diana, it's him." As they waited for Dr. Elix to arrive, Hawkins began organizing the retrieval mission. To her surprise, she found both humans and Nigians volunteering for the task, their previous animosity seemingly forgotten in the wake of the Harmony Serum's effects. Dr. Lyra, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to keep Derek and Diana stable. Their condition continued to fluctuate wildly, their bodies caught between two physiologies, struggling to find equilibrium. "Hold on," Dr. Lyra whispered to her unconscious patients, her voice uncharacteristically emotional. "Help is coming. Just hold on." Outside, the sounds of conflict had given way to an eerie quiet, punctuated by occasional bursts of activity as former enemies tentatively began to cooperate. The fate of two species hung in the balance, with Derek and Diana at the center of it all. As Dr. Elix's shuttle began its descent through Negia's atmosphere, Hawkins prepared to lead the first retrieval team into the planet's wilderness. The race to save Derek and Diana, and perhaps the future of human-Negian relations, was on. As the shuttle touched down, Dr. Elix emerged, his tentacles curling with urgency. He immediately joined Dr. Lyra at the makeshift medical station, his compound eyes scanning the equipment in the unconscious forms of Derek and Diana. "We need to act fast," Dr. Elix said, his mandibles clicking rapidly as he spoke. "Their hybrid physiology is destabilizing at an alarming rate." Dr. Lyra nodded, her own tentacles rippling with nervous energy. "I've prepared a list of materials we need for the stabilization chamber. It's our best chance to save them." As the two scientists conferred, Hawkins gathered a team of volunteers, a mix of humans and Nigens who had been affected by the Harmony Serum. She briefed them quickly on their mission to retrieve the rare materials needed for the chamber. "Time is of the essence," Hawkins said, her voice firm. "We'll be venturing into some of Nigia's most treacherous terrains. Stay alert and work together." The team set out, their persistence evident in their synchronized movements. As they disappeared into the wilderness, Dr. Lyra and Dr. Elix began the painstaking process of designing the stabilization chamber. Hours passed, filled with tense moments as Derek and Diana's vital signs fluctuated wildly. The medical equipment beeped and chirped incessantly, a constant reminder of the precarious nature of their condition. Just as Dr. Lyra was beginning to fear the worst, Hawkins and her team returned, their clothes torn and bodies bruised, but triumphant. They carried containers filled with glowing crystals, bioluminescent flora, and other exotic materials. "We've got everything on your list," Hawkins announced, her voice hoarse from exertion. With renewed energy, Dr. Lyra and Dr. Elix set to work constructing the chamber. Their tentacles moved with precision, assembling the complex device as human assistants provided support. The chamber took shape before their eyes, a sleek, pod-like structure that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. As the final components were put in place, alarms blared from the medical equipment monitoring Derek and Diana. Their bodies convulsed violently, skin flickering between human and Nigen characteristics at an alarming rate. "We're out of time," Dr. Lyra said, her voice tight with urgency. "We need to start the procedure now." With utmost care, they transferred Derek and Diana into the chamber. As the pod sealed shut, it filled with a luminescent mist that enveloped the unconscious couple. The chamber hummed to life, its energy readings spiking on the monitoring equipment. Outside, the relative calm was shattered by the sound of energy weapons. Vex and his followers had launched their final assault on the communications hub. Hawkins sprang into action, organizing the defenders, a mix of humans and Nigeans united by the effects of the Harmony Serum. "Form a perimeter," Hawkins shouted, her voice carrying over the chaos. "We need to protect the chamber at all costs." As the battle raged outside, Dr. Lyra and Dr. Elix watched anxiously as the stabilization process began. The chamber's energy output fluctuated wildly, causing localized power disruptions throughout the hub. "This isn't right," Dr. Elix muttered, his compound eyes fixed on the readings. "The chamber's energy is interfering with the hub's systems." Dr. Lyra's mind raced, analyzing the problem and potential solutions. Suddenly, an idea struck her. What if we reroute the excess energy to the hub's defensive systems? It could stabilize the chamber and boost our defenses simultaneously. Dr. Elix considered for a moment, then nodded. "It's risky, but it might be our only option." They quickly relayed the plan to Hawkins, who gave the go-ahead. Engineers scrambled to reroute power conduits, working under the pressure of both time and enemy fire. As the modifications were completed, a surge of hybrid energy flooded the hub's defensive grid. The building's shields flared to life with unprecedented strength, easily deflecting Vex's most powerful weapons. The sudden show of force caused confusion among the attacking forces, giving the defenders an opportunity to push back. Inside the chamber, Derek and Diana's transformation accelerated. Their bodies phased in and out of visibility, alternating between solid form and pure energy. New organs and biological systems formed, blending human and Nigean characteristics in ways never before seen. Suddenly, the chamber began to resonate at the same frequency as the earlier planet-wide broadcast. A wave of intense empathic energy pulsed outward from the hub, washing over both defenders and attackers alike. This surge of emotion and understanding was far more potent than the initial broadcast, penetrating even the most resistant minds. Outside, the fighting came to an abrupt halt. Weapons lowered as both sides were overcome by a wave of mutual understanding and empathy. In the midst of the confusion, Vex emerged from the crowd, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. With trembling hands, Vex dropped his weapon and approached the defensive line. I surrender," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I see now the error of my ways." As the fighting subsided, all attention turned back to the stabilization chamber. The energy output began to normalize, and the luminescent mist inside the pod started to dissipate. Dr. Lyra, Hawkins, and a mixed team of human and Nigean medical personnel gathered around, holding their breath as the chamber's seals released with a hiss. The pod opened slowly, revealing Derek and Diana. As they emerged, gasps of awe rippled through the onlookers. The couple's appearance had undergone a radical transformation. Their skin now displayed a perfect blend of human pigmentation and Nigean bioluminescent patterns, shifting and adapting to their surroundings. Their eyes, a mesmerizing swirl of human and Nigean characteristics, opened slowly, taking in the world around them with new clarity. Derek and Diana moved with a grace that seemed to defy the limitations of both human and Nigean physiology. Their bodies seamlessly adapted to the environment, processing and responding to stimuli with unprecedented efficiency. Dr. Lyra approached cautiously, medical scanner in hand. As she took readings, her mandibles clicked in amazement. "Incredible," she breathed. "They've become something entirely new, a perfect fusion of human and Nigean biology." As the news of Derek and Diana's successful transformation spread, a mix of awe, hope, and trepidation rippled through the gathered crowd. The implications of this new hybrid species were enormous, with the potential to reshape the future of both humans and Nigeans. Ambassador Jareth's voice crackled over the comm system. "We need to move them to a secure facility immediately. The political ramifications of this development are significant." As preparations were made to transport Derek and Diana, the couple began to explore their new bond. Their telepathic connection had grown stronger, allowing them to sense not just each other's thoughts and emotions, but also those of the people around them. Derek turned to Diana, his eyes filled with wonder. "Can you feel it?" he asked, his voice a blend of human speech and Nigean harmonics. "It's like we're connected to everything." Diana nodded, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in sync with her emotions. "We're not just us anymore," she replied. "We're something more, something that could change everything." As they were escorted to awaiting transport, Derek and Diana knew that their transformation was just getting started. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter in the evolving relationship between humans and Nigeans, one that would have implications reaching far beyond the confines of Nigia and into the vast expanse of the galaxy. The transport, a sleek vessel designed for both atmospheric and space travel, glided smoothly toward the secure facility. Derek and Diana sat side by side, their newly transformed bodies still a source of wonder and fascination to themselves and those around them. As they approached the facility, Derek turned to Diana, his eyes swirling with a mix of human and Nigean characteristics. "Can you believe how much has changed in such a short time?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of both excitement and trepidation. Diana nodded, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing softly in response to her emotions. "It's overwhelming," she admitted, "but I feel complete somehow, like this is who we were always meant to be." The transport touched down on a landing pad adjacent to a massive domed structure. Ambassador Thorne was waiting for them, flanked by a team of human and Nigean scientists, including Dr. Lyra and Dr. Elex. As Derek and Diana stepped out of the transport, they marveled at how their bodies instinctively adapted to the change in environment. Their skin shifted subtly, adjusting to the temperature and humidity with effortless efficiency. Ambassador Thorne approached them, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. "Welcome," he said, gesturing towards the facility. "We've prepared a special wing for you. Your comfort and safety are our top priorities." As they entered the facility, Derek and Diana were immediately struck by the advanced technology surrounding them. Sensors of various types lined the walls, constantly monitoring and analyzing their new physiology. Dr. Lyra stepped forward, her mandibles clicking with excitement. "We've set up a series of comprehensive tests to help us understand the full extent of your transformation," she explained. "With your permission, we'd like to begin immediately." Derek and Diana exchanged a glance, their enhanced empathic abilities allowing them to sense each other's mix of curiosity and apprehension. After a moment, they nodded in agreement. The next few days were a whirlwind of examinations and tests. The team of scientists, led by Dr. Lyra and Dr. Elex, put Derek and Diana through a battery of physical and cognitive assessments. With each test, the true scope of their transformation became increasingly apparent. In a large open chamber designed for physical evaluations, Derek effortlessly lifted weights that would have challenged even the strongest human or Nigean. Diana demonstrated agility and reflexes that left the observing scientists in awe, navigating a complex obstacle course with fluid grace. During a camouflage test, Derek and Diana stunned the research team by blending seamlessly into their surroundings within seconds. Their skin adapted not just in color, but in texture as well, mimicking the surfaces they touched with uncanny accuracy. However, it was during the empathic ability test that the most surprising developments occurred. As Derek and Diana focused on projecting emotions, the scientists monitoring the test found themselves overwhelmed by waves of calm or excitement. Dr. Elix, his compound eyes wide with amazement, turned to Dr. Lyra. "This goes beyond simple empathy," he said, his voice hushed. "They're not just sensing emotions, they're actively influencing them." As news of Derek and Diana's abilities spread, public interest in their case grew exponentially. The secure facility became a hub of activity, with researchers and politicians alike clamoring for access to the hybrid couple. Recognizing the potential impact of the situation, Ambassador Thorne organized a series of controlled public appearances. "We need to manage this carefully," he explained to Derek and Diana. "Your existence has the power to reshape human-Nigen relations, but it could also destabilize everything we've worked for if handled poorly." The first public appearance was a carefully stage-managed event, with Derek and Diana addressing a mixed audience of humans and Nigians via holographic projection. As they spoke about their experiences and the potential for unity between the two species, their enhanced empathic abilities seemed to resonate with the audience, creating a palpable sense of harmony and understanding. However, not everyone was receptive to the idea of human-Nigen hybrids. During their second public appearance, a group of anti-hybrid extremists managed to breach the security perimeter. As they rushed towards Derek and Diana, weapons raised, the couple's enhanced reflexes kicked in. Moving with incredible speed and coordination, Derek and Diana evaded the attackers while simultaneously projecting waves of calming energy. The security detail, momentarily stunned by the couple's abilities, quickly regained their composure and subdued the extremists. The incident, while quickly contained, sent shockwaves through both human and Nigen societies. General Kraz, still grappling with his own shifting perspectives in the wake of the Harmony Serum's effects, saw an opportunity for unprecedented cooperation. In a meeting with Ambassador Thorne, General Kraz proposed the creation of a joint human-Nigen task force. This task force will not only protect Derek and Diana, he explained, his mandibles clicking with commitment, but also investigate any threats against them. "It's time we put aside our differences and work together." As plans for the task force were set in motion, Derek and Diana found themselves facing new challenges. Their bodies, still adapting to their hybrid nature, began to experience intense physiological urges that neither human nor Nigian medical experts fully understood. During a private consultation with Dr. Lyra, Diana described the sensations. "It's like a constant pull," she explained, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with intensity. "We feel this overwhelming need to be close to each other, to connect on a level we've never experienced before." Dr. Lyra's antennae twitched thoughtfully as she considered Diana's words. "This could be a biological imperative related to your hybrid nature," she hypothesized, "possibly linked to reproduction or further evolution of your new species." As Derek and Diana grappled with these new urges, the situation posed ethical dilemmas for the research team and political challenges for Ambassador Thorne. Debates erupted over whether to allow the couple to act on these impulses, given the unknown consequences and the potential for creating more hybrid individuals. Amidst this turmoil, an unexpected development arose. Other humans and Nigians who had been heavily exposed to the empathic wave during the stabilization process began to exhibit mild hybrid characteristics. While not as pronounced as Derek and Diana's transformation, these individuals showed increased empathy, slightly enhanced physical abilities, and in some cases, faint bioluminescent patterns on their skin. As the implications of this discovery began to sink in, Ambassador Thorne received an urgent communication from Earth. The United Earth government, having been briefed on the situation, expressed both interest and concern over the developments on Nigeria. They announced the imminent dispatch of a specialized diplomatic team to assess the situation firsthand. With the arrival of the Earth delegation looming, Derek and Diana found themselves at the center of not just Nigian politics, but potentially Earth's entire approach to interstellar diplomacy. The pressure intensified as they realized that their personal choices could have far-reaching consequences for both their species. As they prepared for the arrival of the Earth delegation, Derek and Diana retreated to their private quarters, seeking a moment of respite from the constant scrutiny and demands placed upon them. The room, designed to accommodate their unique physiology, pulsed with soft, adaptive lighting that responded to their emotional states. Derek turned to Diana, his eyes swirling with a mix of uncertainty and longing. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "These urges. They're getting stronger, but the consequences of giving in..." Diana reached out, her fingers intertwining with Derek's. As their skin made contact, a surge of energy seemed to pass between them, their bioluminescent patterns synchronizing in a mesmerizing dance of light and color. "I don't know," she replied, her voice a blend of human speech and Nijin harmonics. "But whatever we decide, we'll face it together." As they stood there, locked in an embrace that bridged two species, the weight of their decision hung in the air. Their choice would not only affect their personal lives but could also set the course for the future of human-Nijin relations and possibly reshape the approach to interspecies interactions across the galaxy. Outside their quarters, the facility hummed with activity as preparations for the Earth delegation's arrival continued. The future of two species and countless generations hung in the balance, all hinging on the choices of two individuals who were neither fully human nor fully Nijin, but something entirely new. New. As they stood together, the air around them seemed to crackle with energy. Their enhanced senses picked up the increased activity outside their quarters, a cacophony of voices and hurried footsteps that spoke of the preparations for the Earth delegation's arrival. Derek gently pulled away from Diana, his eyes searching hers. "We can't ignore this forever," he said softly. "These urges, they're getting stronger by the minute." Diana nodded, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in agreement. "I know. It's like there's a force pulling us together, something beyond our control." Before they could discuss further, a gentle chime sounded, indicating someone at their door. Dr. Lyra's voice came through the intercom. "Derek, Diana, may we come in? We have a proposal we'd like to discuss with you." The couple exchanged a glance, their empathic abilities allowing them to sense each other's mix of curiosity and apprehension. Derek called out, "Come in." The door slid open, revealing Dr. Lyra and Dr. Elix, accompanied by Ambassador Thorne. The Nigean scientist's antennae twitched with impossibly strong excitement, while the ambassador's face was a mask of diplomatic neutrality. Dr. Lyra stepped forward, her compound eyes fixed on the couple. "We've been monitoring your physiological responses over the past few days," she began, her mandibles clicking softly. "The data suggests that these urges you're experiencing are not just a side effect of your transformation, but potentially a crucial part of your new biology." Dr. Elix continued, "We believe it's imperative to study these impulses in a controlled environment, for your safety and to further our understanding of your unique physiology." Ambassador Thorne cleared his throat, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. "I've approved their proposal, but I want you both to understand that this is entirely voluntary. Your comfort and consent are paramount." Derek and Diana listened intently as Dr. Lyra explained the details of the proposed study. The medical wing would be converted into a specialized chamber, equipped with advanced sensors to monitor their responses during intimate encounters. Diana's bioluminescent patterns flickered with a mix of emotions. "You want us to be intimate while you study us?" she asked, her voice a blend of disbelief and curiosity. Dr. Elix nodded enthusiastically. "Your interaction could provide invaluable data on the nature of your hybrid physiology. It may even hold the key to understanding the future of human-Nijin relations." Derek squeezed Diana's hand, sensing her conflicted feelings through their empathic link. "What do you think?" he asked softly. Diana took a deep breath, her patterns stabilizing as she came to a decision. "If it could help others understand what we're going through, and if it might provide answers about our condition, I think we should do it." With their agreement, Preparations began immediately. The couple was escorted to the newly converted medical wing, now transformed into a spacious chamber that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. As they entered, Derek and Diana were struck by the room's design. The walls shimmered with a soft, adaptive light that responded to their presence. The air was filled with a subtle, pleasant aroma that seemed to heighten their senses. Dr. Lyra's voice came through a hidden speaker system. "We'll be monitoring from an adjacent room. You have complete privacy, but if at any point you wish to stop, just say the word." Left alone in the chamber, Derek and Diana faced each other. The pull between them, which had been growing steadily stronger, now seemed almost overwhelming. "Are you ready?" Derek asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Diana nodded, her bioluminescent patterns beginning to pulse with increasing intensity. "I think I've been ready since the moment we changed." As they came together, their bodies seeming to move of their own accord, the room's sensors sprang to life. In the monitoring station, Dr. Lyra and Dr. Elix watched in awe as data streams flooded their screens. The moment Derek and Diana's lips met, their bioluminescent patterns exploded into a dazzling display of synchronized light. The chamber itself seemed to respond, the adaptive lighting pulsing in harmony with their energies. Their empathic abilities surged, creating a feedback loop of shared sensations and emotions. Every touch, every feeling was amplified and reflected between them, building in intensity. In the monitoring room, alarms began to sound. Dr. Elix's compound eyes widened as he analyzed the incoming data. "The energy output is off the charts," he exclaimed. "It's affecting the facility's systems." Throughout the building, lights flickered and communication devices crackled with interference. The power grid strained under the unexpected load, causing temporary outages in various sections. Outside the facility, the gathered crowd of humans and Nigeans who had been exposed to the initial empathic wave suddenly fell silent. As one, they turned towards the building, drawn by an inexplicable urge. Inside the chamber, Derek and Diana were lost in their connection, oblivious to the chaos their union was causing. Their bodies moved together in perfect synchronization, their bioluminescent patterns creating intricate, ever-changing patterns across their skin. As they reached the peak of their intimacy, a massive surge of energy erupted from their bodies. The chamber was bathed in blinding light, and for a moment it seemed as if reality itself bent around them. The energy pulse radiated outward, overloading the facility's power grid and plunging the building into darkness. Outside, the gathered crowd gasped as the wave washed over them, intensifying their hybrid traits and creating a momentary psychic link between all those affected. In the aftermath of the energy surge, as emergency systems slowly came back online, Dr. Lyra made a startling discovery. Scans of Derek and Diana revealed that their genetic structure had once again shifted, this time stabilizing into a perfect balance between human and Nigen DNA. But it was the next piece of information that left the scientific team stunned. Further analysis showed unmistakable signs of a unique form of reproduction taking place within Diana's body. Something neither entirely human nor Nigean, but something entirely new. As news of the event and its apparent consequences began to spread through the facility, Derek and Diana emerged from the chamber, their bodies still faintly glowing. They found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity, with scientists, politicians, and security personnel all clamoring for information and access. Ambassador Thorne pushed through the crowd, his face a mix of awe and concern. "Derek, Diana," he said urgently, "we need to talk. The Earth delegation has just arrived and, well, things have become considerably more complicated." The couple exchanged a glance, their newfound connection allowing them to share a moment of silent understanding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as the living embodiment of a new chapter in human-Nigen relations. The weight of their newfound responsibility settled heavily upon them as they followed Ambassador Thorne out of the chamber. As they emerged into the corridor, they were immediately surrounded by a flurry of activity. Scientists rushed past with data pads, security personnel barked orders into communication devices, and the air was thick with tension. Derek instinctively wrapped an arm around Diana, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing in sync as they navigated the chaos. Ambassador Thorne led them to a hastily prepared conference room where Dr. Lyra and Dr. Elix were already waiting. The Nigean scientist's antennae twitched with nearly unleashed excitement as the couple entered. "We've made some remarkable discoveries," Dr. Lyra began without preamble, her compound eyes fixed on Diana. "Our initial scans indicate a unique form of reproduction occurring within your body, Diana. It's unlike anything we've seen in either human or Nigean biology." Diana's hand unconsciously moved to her abdomen, her eyes widening. "Are you saying I'm pregnant?" Dr. Elix nodded enthusiastically. "In a manner of speaking, yes. But this is no ordinary pregnancy. The genetic structure of the embryo is constantly shifting, adapting in real time to your hybrid physiology." Before they could process this information, Ambassador Thorne cleared his throat. "I'm afraid we don't have time for a full briefing. The Earth delegation has just arrived, and they're demanding answers." As if on cue, the door slid open, revealing a group of stern-faced humans in crisp uniforms. At their head was a tall, imposing woman with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. She strode into the room, her gaze immediately locking onto Derek and Diana. "I'm Admiral Helena Vance, head of the Earth delegation," she announced, her voice sharp and authoritative. "I need to know exactly what's going on here, and I need to know now." Derek stepped forward, his hybrid form towering over the Admiral. "With all due respect, Admiral, we're still trying to understand that ourselves." Admiral Vance's eyes narrowed. "Be that as it may, the implications of your condition are far-reaching. We need to establish protocols, containment procedures." "Containment?" Diana interjected, her voice rising. "We're not a threat to be contained." The tension in the room skyrocketed, the air practically crackling with energy. Suddenly, Diana doubled over, gasping in pain. Her bioluminescent patterns flared erratically, casting wild shadows across the room. "Diana!" Derek cried, rushing to her side. As soon as he touched her, a surge of energy pulsed through them both, causing the lights in the room to flicker and dim. Dr. Lyra sprang into action, her delicate Nigean fingers dancing over a handheld scanner. "Her body temperature is fluctuating rapidly," she reported, her voice tight with concern. "We need to get her to the medical wing immediately." As they rushed Diana out of the room, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. General Kraz's voice boomed over the intercom system. "Attention all personnel. We are initiating lockdown procedures. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Derek cradled Diana in his arms as they hurried through the corridors, their combined energy causing electronic devices to malfunction in their wake. They burst into the medical wing, where a team of human and Nigean doctors were already preparing for their arrival. As they laid Diana on the examination table, Dr. Elix's antennae suddenly went rigid. "The energy output, it's affecting the others," he exclaimed, gesturing to the observation window. Through the glass, they could see a group of humans and Nigeans who had been exposed to the initial empathic wave. Their bodies were beginning to glow faintly, mirroring the bioluminescent patterns on Derek and Diana's skin. "It's spreading," Dr. Lyra whispered, her compound eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. "Their hybrid traits are intensifying." Before anyone could respond, the facility was plunged into darkness. The energy surge from Derek and Diana had overloaded the power grid, shutting down all electronic systems. In the eerie silence that followed, they could hear the distant sound of shouting and running feet. "The security systems," Ambassador Thorne muttered, his face pale in the dim emergency lighting. "They're down." As if to confirm his fears, the door to the medical wing burst open. A group of Nigeans, led by a tall, imposing figure, stormed into the room. The leader's eyes fixed on Derek and Diana, his antennae quivering with barely suppressed rage. "I am Senator Zorn," he declared, his voice ringing with authority, "and I demand access to these hybrids. The Nigean people have a right to know what's happening to our world." Derek moved protectively in front of Diana, his hybrid form towering over the Nigean senator. The air around him began to shimmer with energy, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing with an intensity that made Senator Zorn take an involuntary step back. "No one is demanding anything," Derek growled, his voice a blend of human speech and Nagian harmonics. "My wife needs medical attention, and you're interfering." The standoff was interrupted by the sound of running footsteps in the corridor. General Kraz burst into the room, flanked by a squad of security personnel. "Senator Zorn," he barked, "you're in violation of security protocols. Stand down immediately." As tensions escalated in the medical wing, Diana's condition continued to deteriorate. Her body temperature spiked again, causing her bioluminescent patterns to flare wildly. The energy radiating from her body intensified, creating a visible aura that enveloped both her and Derek. Outside the facility, the gathered crowd of humans and Nigians with mild hybrid traits suddenly fell silent. As one, they turned towards the building, drawn by an inexplicable urge. The security perimeter strained as people pushed forward, their own faint bioluminescent patterns beginning to pulse in sync with the energy emanating from within. Inside, Dr. Lyra and Dr. Elix worked frantically to stabilize Diana's condition, their delicate Nigan hands moving with practiced precision despite the chaos around them. Derek remained by her side, his presence seeming to have a calming effect on her erratic energy output. Ambassador Thorne, caught between the competing demands of Senator Zorn, General Kraz, and the Earth delegation, attempted to maintain order. "Everyone, please," he shouted over the din. "We need to focus on the immediate situation. Diana's condition is critical, and we don't fully understand the implications of—" His words were cut short by a deafening boom that shook the entire facility. Through the observation window, they could see a bright flash illuminating the night sky. "What was that?" Admiral Vance demanded, her composure slipping for the first time. General Kraz pressed a hand to his earpiece, his face grim as he listened to the report. "An unidentified vessel has breached our orbital defenses," he announced. "It's landed not far from here." As the implications of this new development sank in, Diana suddenly sat up on the examination table, her eyes wide and unfocused. "They're here," she whispered, her voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "They've come for us." Derek turned to her, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. "Who? Diana, who's here?" Before she could answer, another surge of energy erupted from their bodies, more powerful than any before. The shock wave radiated outward, overloading what remained of the facility's systems and plunging everything into darkness once more. In the pitch black, only the bioluminescent glow of Derek and Diana's bodies provided any light. As eyes adjusted to the darkness, those present could see that the couple's patterns were now moving in perfect synchronization, creating complex, ever-changing designs across their skin. "What's happening to them?" Senator Zorn demanded, his earlier bravado replaced by a note of fear. Dr. Lyra's voice came from the darkness, filled with awe and trepidation. "I believe they're evolving, and they're taking us with them." As if in response to her words, the faint glow emanating from the humans and Nigans in the room began to intensify. The hybrid traits that had been developing in those exposed to the empathic wave were accelerating, changing them in ways that were both wondrous and terrifying. Outside, the crowd surged forward, no longer held back by the malfunctioning security systems. Their collective consciousness, linked by the expanding empathic field, pulsed with a single, overwhelming desire: to be closer to Derek and Diana, to be part of whatever transformation was taking place. In orbit, Colonel Steele's ship approached Nigia, unaware of the chaos unfolding on the surface. As they began their descent, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but the entire planet, it's glowing." Glowing. Colonel Steele's eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. The entire planet of Nigia was enveloped in a pulsating, bioluminescent aura that seemed to ripple across its surface. As their ship descended through the atmosphere, the true scale of the transformation became apparent. The facility where Derek and Diana were housed stood at the epicenter of the phenomenon, radiating waves of energy that washed over the landscape. As they approached, Steele could see the massive crowd gathered outside, their bodies faintly glowing in sync with the pulses emanating from the building. "Land us as close as you can to the main entrance," Steele ordered, his voice tense, "and be ready for anything." As the ship touched down, the colonel and his team of human peacekeepers disembarked, immediately confronted by the surging crowd. The air was thick with a strange electric charge that made the hair on their arms stand on end. "Use non-lethal methods only," Steele commanded as they pushed forward. "We need to get inside without causing a panic." The peacekeepers moved in formation, using sonic deterrents and energy shields to create a path through the throng of hybrid-affected individuals. As they neared the facility's entrance, Steele spotted a familiar face. Vex, the Nigian diplomat he had encountered during previous negotiations. Vex was attempting to calm a group of agitated hybrids, his own body showing signs of the transformation. His skin shimmered with faint bioluminescent patterns, and his eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. "Vex," Steele called out, pushing through the last of the crowd. "What's the situation here?" The Nigian turned, relief washing over his features. "Colonel Steele, thank the stars you're here. The situation is volatile, to say the least." As Vex quickly briefed Steele on the events that had unfolded, the colonel realized they needed to work together to prevent a full-scale riot. "We need to establish a dialogue," Steele said, his mind racing, "between my team, your security forces, and these people." Vex nodded, his antennae twitching with nervous energy. "Agreed, but we must act quickly. The energy pulses from inside are growing stronger." Together, Steele and Vex began to coordinate their efforts. The human peacekeepers formed a protective barrier around the entrance while Vex used his diplomatic skills to engage with the crowd. Slowly, the tension began to ease as communication lines opened up. Inside the facility, the situation was no less chaotic. The medical wing where Diana lay was a hive of frantic activity. Dr. Lyra and Dr. Elix worked tirelessly, their delicate Nigian fingers dancing over complex equipment as they fought to stabilize Diana's condition. Derek stood by her side, his massive hybrid form casting long shadows in the dim emergency lighting. His hand found Diana's, and as their fingers intertwined, their bioluminescent patterns synchronized in a dazzling display. Suddenly, Diana's eyes flew open, glowing with an otherworldly light. "Derek," she gasped, her voice resonating with harmonic overtones. "The baby, it's changing everything." As if in response to her words, a visible energy field materialized around them. It pulsed outward, passing through walls and floors as if they were insubstantial. The field expanded rapidly, enveloping the entire facility and beyond. In the main atrium, where General Kraz and his security team had contained Senator Zorn and his followers, the atmosphere of hostility suddenly dissipated. The Nigian senator blinked in confusion, the rage that had fueled his actions moments ago replaced by a strange sense of calm. General Kraz, sensing the shift, took a cautious step forward. "Senator Zorn," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Perhaps now we can discuss this situation rationally." Outside, the energy field washed over the gathered crowd. Instead of panic, a wave of understanding seemed to ripple through the hybrid-affected individuals. Many closed their eyes, swaying gently as they explored their newfound abilities with a sense of wonder rather than fear. Back in the medical wing, Dr. Lyra's compound eyes widened as she studied the readouts on her scanner. "This is incredible," she breathed. "The fetus, it's developing at an unprecedented rate. And look at this energy signature." Dr. Elix leaned in, his antennae quivering with excitement. "It's harmonizing with both Derek and Diana's biological rhythms. I've never seen anything like it." As the energy field stabilized, Ambassador Thorne burst into the room, his face a mask of perseverance. "We need to convene an emergency meeting," he announced. "All key parties, human, Nigian, scientific, security, we need to address this situation before it spirals further out of control." Even as preparations for the meeting began, a new complication arose. A small group of beings, neither human nor Nigian, appeared at the facility's perimeter. They moved with fluid grace, passing through security checkpoints as if they were invisible. Colonel Steele, alerted to their presence, watched in amazement as the newcomers approached. Their bodies seemed to shift and adapt to their surroundings, a more advanced version of the hybrid biology displayed by Derek and Diana. "Who are you?" Steele demanded as they drew near. The leader of the group, a tall, slender being with iridescent skin, stepped forward. "We are representatives of the Galactic Harmony Initiative," it said, its voice a melodious blend of tones. "We've come to offer our assistance in this delicate situation." As Steele escorted the mysterious aliens into the facility, the various factions began to converge for the emergency meeting. The conference room buzzed with tension despite the lingering effects of the calming energy field. Derek and Diana were the last to enter, their joined hands glowing softly. As they took their seats, all eyes turned to them, a hush falling over the assembled leaders and experts. Ambassador Thorne cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, delegates of Earth and Negia, and our unexpected guests, we stand at a crossroads of unprecedented significance. The decisions we make here today will shape the future of not just our two species, but potentially the entire galaxy." As Thorne's words hung in the air, the stage was set for a discussion that would determine the course of human-Nigen relations, the fate of the hybrid child growing within Diana, and perhaps the very nature of interspecies cooperation in the cosmos. Galaxy. As the ambassador's words hung in the air, Derek and Diana entered the room, their joined hands emitting a soft glow. All eyes turned to them, and a hush fell over the assembled leaders and experts. Dr. Lyra stepped forward, her compound eyes scanning the readouts on her tablet. "If I may, Ambassador, I'd like to present our latest findings on Derek and Diana's condition." Ambassador Thorne nodded, gesturing for her to continue. The Nigen scientist's antennae twitched as she began her presentation. "The fetus is developing at an unprecedented rate. Our scans show signs of advanced cognitive function despite its early stage. Most intriguingly, the energy field emanating from Diana's abdomen appears to be a form of communication between the unborn child and its parents." Murmurs rippled through the room as the implications sank in. Senator Zorn, his earlier hostility noticeably subdued, raised a hand. "Dr. Lyra, what does this mean for Nigean society? The potential impact of hybrid children on our culture and way of life is concerning." His words, though less aggressive than before, sparked a heated debate among the assembled leaders. Voices rose as humans and Nigens alike argued about the future of both species. Amidst the rising tension, one of the mysterious hybrid aliens stepped forward. His iridescent skin shimmered as he moved, drawing all attention to him. "If I may interject," he said, his voice a melodious blend of tones, "I am Zephyr, an emissary from the Galactic Harmony Council." The room fell silent as Zephyr continued. "We have been monitoring the situation on Negia. Derek and Diana's union represents a crucial turning point in interspecies relations. Similar hybrid pairings have occurred on other worlds, often leading to significant advancements in technology, medicine, and social harmony." His eyes swept the room, meeting the gaze of each leader in turn. "However, I must warn you that such unions can also trigger fear and conflict if not properly managed. The Galactic Harmony Council offers our expertise to help guide Negia through this transformative period." As the assembled leaders processed this information, Diana suddenly doubled over, her face contorting in pain. Derek rushed to her side, their bodies immediately synchronizing and emitting a bright pulse of energy. The pulse swept through the room, temporarily enhancing the empathic abilities of everyone present. For a brief moment, humans, Nigens, and hybrids alike experienced a profound sense of unity and understanding. Ambassador Thorne, his eyes wide with the lingering effects of the empathic pulse, saw an opportunity. "We must act now, while we still share this connection," he said urgently. "I propose the creation of a joint human-Nigen task force to study and manage the emergence of hybrid traits in the population." General Kraz nodded, his usual stern expression softened by the shared empathy. "Agreed. We need a coordinated response to this rapidly evolving situation." Colonel Steele, standing near the door with his team, added his support. "My peacekeepers are at your disposal, Ambassador. We'll work with General Kraz's forces to maintain order and security." As plans for the task force were being discussed, Dr. Elix's antennae suddenly stood rigid. He held up his portable scanner, his voice urgent. Ambassador, we have a situation. The energy signature from Diana's abdomen is resonating with the facility's communication systems. Before anyone could react, the facility's long-range transmitters activated, broadcasting a signal into space. Colonel Steele immediately sprang into action. "Lock down the facility now," he barked into his comm unit. But it was too late. Dr. Elix's scanner beeped frantically. "A massive energy surge is approaching Nigia at incredible speed," he reported, his voice trembling. Zephyr and his fellow council members exchanged worried glances. "The signal," Zephyr explained, his tone grave, "has likely attracted the attention of the progenitors." "The who?" Senator Zorn demanded, his earlier calm evaporating. "An ancient race," Zephyr replied, "believed to be responsible for seeding the galaxy with life. Long thought extinct, they're known to take an interest in significant evolutionary events." Panic began to spread among the assembled leaders. But as fear threatened to overtake the room, Derek and Diana's empathic abilities suddenly intensified. A wave of calm radiated from them, washing over the facility and beyond. Outside, the crowd of hybrid-affected individuals began to exhibit new abilities. Some leapt with newfound strength and agility, while others appeared to communicate without speaking. General Kraz's security feeds showed his forces struggling to contain the situation as these newly empowered individuals unintentionally caused disruptions. Ambassador Thorne, his face set with determination, raised his voice above the commotion. "We must act now. Dr. Lyra, Dr. Elix, you'll lead our scientific efforts. General Kraz, Colonel Steele, focus on maintaining security and order." He turned to the Nijian diplomat who had been working with Steele. "Vex, we need you as liaison between the task force and the hybrid-affected population. Your diplomatic skills will be crucial in maintaining peace." As the impromptu task force mobilized, Dr. Lyra approached Derek and Diana, her scanner humming. Her compound eyes widened as she studied the readouts. "The fetus," she breathed, "it's already reached a developmental stage equivalent to several months of gestation. This is unprecedented." The facility transformed into a hive of activity. Scientists rushed to gather data on the hybrid phenomena. Security forces established new protocols, and diplomats hurriedly drafted plans for first contact with the progenitors. At the center of it all stood Derek and Diana, their bodies glowing with an ever-intensifying energy. They gazed at each other, then at the assembled leaders working frantically around them. Diana placed a hand on her abdomen, feeling the life growing within her at an impossible rate. "What happens now?" she asked softly, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. Derek squeezed her hand, his own voice harmonizing with hers. "I don't know," he admitted, "but whatever comes next, we'll face it together." As if in response to his words, the energy field around them pulsed, sending another wave of empathic connection through the facility. In that moment, despite the chaos and uncertainty, a sense of unity and purpose filled the air. Human, Nijian, and hybrid alike, they were all part of something greater, a transformation that would reshape their world and perhaps the entire galaxy. Outside, the night sky blazed with an approaching light, growing brighter by the second. The progenitors were coming, and with them, the dawn of a new era for Nigia and humanity. As the night sky blazed with the approaching light of the progenitors, the facility erupted into a flurry of activity. Derek and Diana stood at the center of the storm, their joined hands pulsing with an otherworldly glow. Suddenly, Diana gasped, doubling over as a surge of energy coursed through her body. "Diana!" Derek cried, supporting her as the energy field around them intensified, expanding rapidly to envelop the entire building. Dr. Lyra rushed forward, her compound eyes widening as she observed the changes occurring in both Derek and Diana. "Fascinating," she breathed, her scanner humming as it recorded the data. "Derek, your body temperature is rising significantly, and your skin, it's developing a protective layer similar to our exoskeletons." Derek ran a hand over his arm, feeling the subtle hardening of his skin. "What's happening to us?" As if in response, Diana's bioluminescent patterns flared, pulsating in perfect synchronization with the energy signature emanating from her rapidly expanding abdomen. Dr. Lyra's antennae quivered with excitement as she initiated a series of non-invasive tests. Your bodies are adapting, she explained, her voice filled with wonder. It seems they're evolving to better nurture and protect your hybrid offspring. Outside the facility, the crowd of hybrid-affected individuals continued to grow. Vex, the Nigean diplomat, moved among them with purpose, his voice calm and reassuring as he organized the group into smaller units. Those with enhanced strength, gather to my left, he called out. Telepaths to the right. We need to understand and control these new abilities. General Kraz and Colonel Steele worked in tandem, their previous rivalry set aside in the face of the unfolding crisis. They established a tiered security perimeter around the facility, their mixed teams of human and Nigean soldiers adapting to the rapidly changing situation. Set up containment fields here and here, Kraz ordered, pointing to key positions on a holographic map. We need to be prepared for any scenario. Steele nodded in agreement. My team will handle crowd control. We'll use non-lethal measures only. Many of these people are just as confused and frightened as we are. Inside the conference room, the Galactic Harmony Council members shared crucial information about previous hybrid events on other worlds. Zephyr, his iridescent skin shimmering, addressed the assembled leaders. In some cases, he explained, the hybrid offspring acted as a biological bridge, allowing for unprecedented advancements in interspecies compatibility. The potential for Nigia is enormous. Ambassador Thorne listened intently, his mind racing with the diplomatic possibilities. He began drafting a proposal for galactic cooperation, envisioning Nigia as a hub for interspecies collaboration. Suddenly, the facility's long-range sensors blared to life. Dr. Elix's antennae stood rigid as he interpreted the data. Multiple objects entering Nigia's atmosphere, he announced, his voice tense. The progenitors, they're here. The carefully laid plans dissolved into chaos as the unknown vessels easily bypassed Nigia's planetary defenses. In response to the imminent arrival, Derek and Diana's bodies underwent another swift change. Their skin developed a reflective quality, shimmering like polished metal. Dr. Lyra's compound eyes widened in alarm. This adaptation, it seems designed to protect them from scanning or probing technologies. But the rate of change... She turned to Dr. Elix, her voice urgent. We need to monitor their vital signs closely. These rapid transformations could be putting excessive strain on their bodies. As the progenitor ships landed in a cleared area near the facility, the energy field surrounding Derek and Diana pulsed strongly. Diana cried out, her hands cradling her swollen abdomen. The fetus! Dr. Lyra exclaimed, her scanner beeping frantically. Its development is accelerating even further. It's reached a stage equivalent to late-term pregnancy in a matter of hours. Outside, the progenitors emerged from their vessels. The assembled humans and Nigeans gasped in awe and fear as beings of pure energy materialized before them, their forms shifting and flowing like living light. Ambassador Thorne, accompanied by Zephyr, stepped forward to greet the ancient beings. But before he could utter a word, the progenitors moved purposefully toward the facility, ignoring the welcoming committee entirely. General Kraz's voice crackled over the comm system. Defensive protocols activated. All units, stand ready. Inside the facility, Derek and Diana felt an overwhelming urge to protect their unborn child. Without a word, they broke free from the medical wing, their bodies glowing intensely as they made their way towards the entrance. Stop them, Dr. Lyra called out, but it was too late. The couple's progress left a trail of residual energy, causing systems throughout the facility to malfunction. Lights flickered, doors opened and closed at random, and communication devices emitted bursts of static. As Derek and Diana emerged from the facility, they found themselves face to face with the progenitors. The energy field surrounding the couple expanded dramatically, creating a shimmering barrier between the ancient beings and the assembled humans and Nigians. Time seemed to stand still as two vastly different forms of hybrid life confronted each other. The fate of Nigia, and potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The progenitors' energy forms pulsed and shifted, as if in response to the barrier created by Derek and Diana. Ambassador Thorne, his carefully prepared speech forgotten, watched in awe as the standoff unfolded. The hybrid-affected individuals in the crowd experienced a surge in their abilities, their bodies resonating with the combined energies of the progenitors and the unborn child. As the tension mounted, Derek and Diana stood firm, their hands clasped tightly together. The energy field around them crackled with power, ready to defend against any potential threat. The progenitors, their forms constantly shifting, made no aggressive moves, but their intent focus on the couple was unmistakable. The assembled leaders, scientists, and security forces held their breath, waiting to see how this pivotal encounter would unfold. The future of interspecies relations and the very nature of life in the galaxy was about to be reshaped by the events unfolding on Nigia. Nigia reshaped by the events unfolding on its surface. The progenitor's approach sent ripples of energy through the air, causing the hair on everyone's arms to stand on end. As the ancient beings drew nearer, the energy field surrounding Derek and Diana intensified, transforming into a luminescent dome that enveloped them and their unborn child. The progenitors, their forms shimmering with otherworldly light, halted their advance. They seemed unable to penetrate the protective barrier, their energy forms rippling with what could only be interpreted as surprise. A collective gasp rose from the assembled humans, Nigens, and hybrid-affected individuals as they witnessed this unexpected development. Suddenly, Diana's body convulsed violently. She doubled over, clutching her swollen abdomen as a wave of pain washed over her. The accelerated growth of the fetus had triggered an early onset of labor. "Diana!" Derek cried out, supporting his wife as she struggled to remain standing. Dr. Lyra, who had been monitoring the situation from inside the facility, sprang into action. She rushed out with a team of medical personnel, both human and Nigen, their equipment clattering as they ran. "Set up a medical area here now," Dr. Lyra ordered, her compound eyes scanning Diana's vital signs. The team quickly established a makeshift medical station within the energy dome, their equipment adapting and interfacing with the hybrid energy field in ways that defied conventional understanding. As Diana's labor progressed at an unprecedented rate, Derek's body underwent further changes. His skin developed a network of intricate bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in perfect synchronization with Diana's contractions. This unexpected synchronization appeared to stabilize Diana's condition, allowing her to better cope with the intense physical stress of the accelerated birth process. Outside the dome, the progenitors began to emit complex patterns of light and energy. Zephyr, the Galactic Harmony Council emissary, stepped forward, his iridescent skin reflecting the otherworldly display. "Ambassador Thorn," Zephyr called out, his voice tinged with awe and urgency. "The progenitors are attempting to communicate. They're expressing both curiosity and concern about the hybrid child's birth." As Diana's labor intensified, the energy field surrounding the couple expanded further, now encompassing the entire assembled crowd. This expansion triggered a wave of physiological changes in the hybrid-affected individuals. Their nascent abilities stabilized and became more controlled, allowing them to better understand and manipulate their new traits. General Kraz and Colonel Steele exchanged glances, quickly recognizing the potential security implications of these rapidly evolving abilities. They sprang into action, implementing new protocols to maintain order. "Telekinetics, form a perimeter," Steele barked. "Empaths, assist with crowd control. We need to keep everyone calm." Inside the energy dome, Dr. Lyra and her team worked tirelessly to ensure a safe delivery. The medical equipment, infused with the hybrid energy, provided unprecedented insights into the physiology of the unborn child. "Fascinating," Dr. Lyra murmured, her antennae quivering with excitement. "The fetus possesses a unique organ. It appears to be the source of its energy manipulation abilities." As the moment of birth approached, the progenitor's light patterns became more urgent. Zephyr's brow furrowed as he interpreted their message. "The birth of this hybrid child represents a crucial juncture in galactic evolution," he announced, his voice carrying across the tense crowd. "The progenitors warn that the child's power could either usher in an era of unprecedented harmony or trigger a catastrophic imbalance in the fabric of spacetime." Ambassador Thorne's face set in fierce dedication as he began coordinating with both human and Nigen leaders to prepare for various scenarios. The energy dome suddenly pulsed with blinding intensity as Diana entered the final stages of labor. The assembled crowd watched in awe as the dome became translucent, allowing them to witness the birth. Derek, his body now covered in intricate glowing patterns, supported Diana through the final push. With a final surge of energy that momentarily overloaded all nearby equipment, Diana gave birth to a child that defied easy classification. The infant, neither fully human nor Nigen, emitted a soft, pulsating glow. Its skin shifted between various textures and colors, and its eyes displayed an otherworldly awareness. Dr. Lyra carefully examined the newborn, her compound eyes widening in amazement. "Its hybrid physiology is unlike anything ever recorded," she reported. "The child possesses characteristics of both species, but also exhibits entirely new biological structures." The birth triggered a cascading effect throughout the facility and the surrounding area. The energy field that had surrounded Derek and Diana dissipated, spreading outward in a wave that washed over everyone present. This energy wave caused further mutations in the hybrid-affected population, stabilizing their new abilities and granting them a heightened sense of connection to both their human and Nigen heritages. As the energy wave subsided, the progenitors finally approached Derek, Diana, and their newborn child. The ancient beings coalesced into more tangible forms, resembling luminous, androgynous humanoids. They reached out towards the infant, their intentions unclear. Derek and Diana instinctively moved to shield their child, their bodies emitting a protective glow. The assembled crowd watched with held breath as the future of human-Nigen relations, and potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The progenitors paused, their luminous forms flickering with what seemed to be uncertainty. One of them, slightly taller than the others, stepped forward and raised a hand, palm outward, in a gesture that appeared both calming and inquisitive. Zephyr's voice cut through the tense silence. "They wish to communicate directly with the child," he explained, his tone a mixture of awe and apprehension. Derek and Diana exchanged a look, their newly enhanced connection allowing for wordless communication. After a moment of silent deliberation, they slowly lowered their protective stance, though their bodies remained tense and ready to act if necessary. As the lead progenitor's hand neared the infant, tendrils of energy began to flow between them. The child's eyes, which had been shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors, suddenly focused, locking onto the ancient being before it. A soft coo escaped the infant's lips, but the sound carried an otherworldly resonance that sent shivers through all who heard it. The energy exchange intensified, creating a dazzling display of light and color that engulfed the progenitor and the child. Ambassador Thorne, Dr. Lyra, and the others looked on, transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before them. Suddenly, the infant's unique organ, the one Dr. Lyra had identified earlier, began to pulse with an intense light. The progenitor's form flickered and warped, as if struggling to maintain its cohesion in the face of this unexpected power. Derek stepped forward, his protective instincts flaring. "What's happening?" he demanded, his voice carrying a new timbre that resonated with the energy surrounding them. Before anyone could respond, the energy exchange abruptly ceased. The lead progenitor stumbled back, its form briefly destabilizing before re-solidifying. The other progenitors moved to support their comrade, their light patterns pulsing with what could only be described as concern. The infant, seemingly unaffected by the intense exchange, gurgled happily in Diana's arms. Its skin continued to shift and change, now incorporating patterns that bore a striking resemblance to the progenitor's energy forms. Zephyr, his antennae twitching rapidly, focused intently on the progenitor's light emissions. "They're surprised," he translated, his voice filled with wonder. "The child's abilities far exceed their expectations. They say it possesses the potential to reshape the very foundations of reality." As the implications of Zephyr's words sank in, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. The future they had imagined, one of peaceful coexistence between humans and Nigens, suddenly seemed quaint in comparison to the cosmic possibilities presented by this hybrid child. Ambassador Thorne stepped forward, his diplomatic training kicking in despite the unprecedented nature of the situation. "What does this mean for our worlds?" he asked, addressing both the progenitors and Zephyr. For the galaxy? The progenitors conferred among themselves, their energy patterns shifting rapidly. After a moment, the lead progenitor turned back to face the group, its form solidifying into a more humanoid shape. Zephyr listened intently, his eyes widening as he interpreted the ancient being's response. They say, he began, his voice trembling slightly, that the child represents a new phase of evolution, one that bridges not just our species, but the very fabric of space and time itself. As the weight of this revelation settled over the gathering, Derek and Diana looked down at their child, marveling at the cosmic potential contained within such a small form. The infant gazed back at them, its eyes swirling with colors and energies beyond human or Nagian comprehension. The progenitors, having delivered their message, began to withdraw. Their forms grew less distinct, merging with the ambient energy that now permeated the area. As they faded from view, their final transmission echoed through Zephyr's translation. The child's path is unwritten, its power a double-edged sword. Guide it well, for the fate of all rests in your hands. With that, the progenitors vanished, leaving behind a world forever changed. The assembled leaders, scientists, and newly empowered hybrids stood in stunned silence, grappling with the enormity of what had just transpired. Ambassador Thorne, ever the diplomat, was the first to break the silence. "We have much to discuss," he said, his voice steady despite the circumstances, "and even more to prepare for." As if on cue, the infant in Diana's arms let out a soft laugh, a sound that carried with it the promise of wonders and challenges yet to come. The future of Nigia, Earth, and indeed the entire galaxy had been irrevocably altered. The dawn of a new era had arrived, brought forth by the birth of a single extraordinary child. As the weight of the progenitor's final words settled over the gathering, an unexpected surge of energy pulsed through Derek and Diana. Their bodies illuminated with a brilliant flash, forcing the ancient beings to retreat momentarily. The sudden display of power caught everyone off guard, including the new parents themselves. Dr. Lyra, quick to react, stepped forward and positioned herself between the family and the progenitors. Her compound eyes darted between the parties as she raised her hands in a calming gesture. "Please, everyone remain calm," she said, her voice steady and reassuring. "This is an unprecedented situation for all of us. Let me explain what we're observing." The doctor turned to face the progenitors, her antennae twitching as she began to detail the unique physiology of the hybrid infant. "The child's body is in a constant state of adaptation," she explained, gesturing to the infant's shifting skin patterns. "Its energy manipulation abilities are linked to a newly developed organ, which appears to be reacting to your presence." As Dr. Lyra continued her explanation, the progenitors' forms began to shift. Their imposing, luminous humanoid shapes coalesced into smaller, gentler orbs of light. This transformation visibly eased the tension in Derek and Diana's postures. Ambassador Thorne, sensing an opportunity, approached the group. "Perhaps we can find a middle ground," he suggested, his diplomatic instincts kicking in. "What if we create a controlled environment where you can observe and interact with the child under supervision?" After a moment of silent communication, the progenitors pulsed their agreement. Derek and Diana exchanged a look before nodding their assent. Within minutes, a team of human and Nigean engineers erected a transparent dome around the medical area. The structure hummed with energy, designed to contain and regulate the emissions from both the hybrid child and the progenitors. As the observation began, the infant displayed remarkable abilities. Its skin rippled and changed, perfectly mimicking the dome's transparent surface. The child's eyes, filled with an otherworldly awareness, tracked the floating orbs of the progenitors with uncanny precision. Dr. Lyra monitored a series of holographic displays, her antennae twitching with excitement. "Fascinating," she murmured. "The energy manipulation organ is becoming increasingly active. It appears to be—" Her words were cut short as the infant emitted a pulse of energy that intersected with the progenitor's light forms. The ancient beings pulsed in response, creating a dazzling interplay of light and energy. Zephyr stepped closer to the dome, his iridescent skin reflecting the ethereal display. "They're communicating," he said, his voice filled with awe. "I can only decipher fragments, but it's clear that an exchange of information is taking place. Outside the dome, the effects of the hybrid child's birth continue to ripple through the crowd. A group of hybrid-affected humans suddenly found themselves able to generate small energy fields, while nearby Nijians discovered enhanced cognitive abilities. General Kraz's voice cut through the commotion. Telekinetics form a perimeter. Empaths assist with crowd control. We need to maintain order. Colonel Steele nodded in agreement, quickly organizing the newly empowered individuals into specialized units. Those with energy manipulation abilities, please report to Sector 3 for assessment, he commanded, his voice carrying across the gathering. Inside the dome, the interaction between the infant and the progenitors intensified. The child began to levitate slightly, surrounded by a soft, pulsating aura. Derek and Diana watched in amazement, their own bodies glowing faintly in response to their child's display of power. Dr. Lyra's eyes widened as she studied her instruments. The energy manipulation organ is evolving rapidly, she reported. Its structure is becoming more complex with each passing moment. It's not just manipulating energy, it's serving as a conduit for information transfer. The progenitors, their orbs pulsing with increased frequency, began to withdraw. As they did, they emitted a final surge of energy that enveloped the hybrid child. The infant's body glowed brightly, briefly taking on a form that seamlessly blended human, Nijian, and progenitor characteristics. As the glow subsided, the child settled back into Derek's arms, now appearing as a normal infant, albeit with a subtle luminescence to its skin. The progenitors, their forms once again shifting to their original ethereal state, moved towards Ambassador Thorne and Zephyr. Zephyr's antenna twitched rapidly as he interpreted the progenitor's light patterns. They're ready to discuss their findings, he announced. They believe this interaction has opened up new possibilities for interspecies cooperation and understanding. Ambassador Thorne straightened his posture, preparing to engage in what would undoubtedly be the most crucial negotiation of his career. Very well, he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Let us begin. As the diplomat stepped forward to meet with the ancient beings, Derek and Diana held their child close. They marveled at the incredible journey that lay ahead for their unique family, while around them, the gathered crowd buzzed with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The stage was set for discussions that would shape the future of human-Nijian relations and potentially redefine the galactic order. The birth of this extraordinary child had ushered in a new era, one filled with both promise and uncertainty. As the negotiations began, all eyes remained fixed on the hybrid infant, the living embodiment of a future none could have imagined. Predicted. Yet amidst the uncertainty, one thing remained clear. The future of humanity and Nijians would be forever intertwined. As the negotiations between Ambassador Thorne and the progenitors commenced, Derek and Diana were ushered away from the main gathering. Dr. Lyra, her compound eyes fixed on the infant with keen scientific interest, guided them through the facility's winding corridors. We have prepared a private medical suite for you, she explained, her antennae twitching with barely held back excitement. I'd like to conduct a thorough examination of all three of you, if that's all right. Derek nodded, his arm protectively wrapped around Diana's shoulders. Of course, Doctor. We're just as eager to understand what's happening. The medical suite was a marvel of human and Nijian technology. Sleek, translucent screens displayed real-time biometric data, while holographic projectors stood ready to create three-dimensional images of their anatomy. The air hummed with the soft whir of advanced diagnostic equipment. Dr. Lyra began her examination, her movements precise and efficient. As she worked, her antennae suddenly stood rigid. Fascinating, she murmured, adjusting a nearby scanner. The child's energy manipulating organ. It's still evolving. Derek leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Is that dangerous? Not dangerous, per se, Dr. Lyra replied, her eyes never leaving the readouts. But it is having an unexpected effect on both of you. As if on cue, Derek felt an odd tingling sensation across his skin. He looked down at his arms, watching in amazement as his skin took on a subtle, glossy sheen, reminiscent of a Nijian's exoskeleton. Diana gasped softly beside him. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin, a remnant of her time in the hybridization chambers, began to shift and swirl with increasing complexity. The patterns pulsed in time with her quickening heartbeat. "Your hybrid traits are becoming more pronounced," Dr. Lyra explained, her voice tinged with awe. "It seems the child's presence is accelerating the integration of Nigene DNA within your bodies." As the examination continued, Derek became acutely aware of Diana's presence beside him. Her scent, always enticing, now seemed to fill his senses completely. He glanced at her, noting the way her newly enhanced bioluminescent patterns danced across her skin. Diana met his gaze, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and unmistakable desire. The air between them seemed to crackle with energy, their bodies emitting a soft, pulsating glow. Dr. Lyra, ever observant, noticed the rising tension. With a discreet cough, she stepped back from the examination table. "I believe I should give you two a moment of privacy," she said, her antennae twitching with what might have been embarrassment. "I'll continue monitoring your vitals remotely. Please take all the time you need." As the door closed behind the Nigel doctor, Derek and Diana turned to each other. Words seemed unnecessary as they came together, their bodies illuminating with a brilliant, pulsating light. Outside the facility, the situation grew increasingly complex. The crowd of hybrid-affected individuals swelled, their newly stabilized abilities manifesting in unexpected ways. A young woman levitated several inches off the ground, her eyes wide with shock. Nearby, two men engaged in a rapid-fire conversation without uttering a single word, their newfound telepathic abilities bridging the gap between thought and speech. General Krass's voice boomed across the gathering, amplified by the energy manipulation abilities of a nearby hybrid. "Remain calm and orderly. Those with enhanced strength, please assist in setting up additional shelters. Telepaths, report to the communication hub for assessment." Colonel Steele moved through the crowd, his eyes sharp as he evaluated the emerging abilities. "Energy manipulators, form a perimeter around the facility. We need to contain any potential power surges." Back in the medical suite, Derek and Diana's intimate encounter reached its peak. A massive wave of energy erupted from their entwined forms, washing over the entire facility. Lights flickered and holographic displays wavered before stabilizing. The energy wave swept through the crowd outside, eliciting gasps of surprise as it momentarily amplified their newfound abilities. A telepath suddenly found his range extended tenfold, while an energy manipulator created a dazzling display of light that rivaled the Nijin auroras. In the conference room, Ambassador Thorne and the progenitors paused their negotiations, their attention drawn to the palpable surge of power. The ancient beings pulsed with increased intensity, their ethereal forms shifting in response to the energy wave. Zephyr, his iridescent skin shimmering, translated their rapid light patterns. "They say this is unprecedented. The hybridization process is accelerating beyond their initial predictions." Ambassador Thorne leaned forward, his eyes sharp with interest. "And what does this mean for our people? For the future of human-Nigel relations?" As Zephyr began to relay the progenitor's response, Dr. Lyra burst into the medical suite, her antennae twitching wildly. She found Derek and Diana exhausted but unharmed, their bodies still emitting a soft, pulsating glow. But it was the sight of their child that caused her compound eyes to widen in shock. The infant, who just hours ago had been a newborn, now appeared to be several months old. Its eyes, filled with an otherworldly awareness, tracked Dr. Lyra's movements with unsettling precision. "Incredible," Dr. Lyra breathed, her scientific mind racing to process the implications. The energy surge. It's accelerated the child's development exponentially. As Derek cradled their rapidly growing child, Diana's bioluminescent patterns swirled with a mixture of awe and concern. "What does this mean, Doctor?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Dr. Lyra could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. The door to the medical suite slid open, revealing General Krass and Colonel Steele. Their expressions were a mixture of urgency and barely suppressed excitement. "We need you both," General Krass announced, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. "The progenitors have made a decision, and it involves your child." Derek and Diana exchanged a look, their enhanced physiology allowing them to communicate volumes without words. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, with their extraordinary child at the center of a new chapter in human ninja history. As they stepped out of the medical suite, the facility buzzed with activity. The future they had imagined just hours ago now seemed quaint in comparison to the reality unfolding before them. The birth of their hybrid child had set in motion changes that would reshape not just two species, but the very fabric of their shared destiny. Universe. As Derek and Diana stepped out of the medical suite, the bustling activity of the facility enveloped them. The air hummed with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, punctuated by the occasional burst of energy from newly empowered hybrids. Their child, now cradled in Derek's arms, gazed at the world with eyes that seemed far too knowing for its age. Dr. Lyra hurried alongside them, her antennae twitching rapidly as she took in the readings from her handheld scanner. "We need to move you to a more secure location," she said, her voice low and urgent. "The child's energy signature is unpredictable. We've prepared special quarters for you." As they made their way through the corridors, facility staff paused in their tasks, eyes widening at the sight of the rapidly growing hybrid child. Diana felt a surge of protectiveness, her newly enhanced senses acutely aware of every stare and whispered comment. The living quarters Dr. Lyra led them to were a stark contrast to the clinical environment of the medical suite. Soft, ambient lighting filled the space, and the walls were adorned with a combination of human and Nigerian art. A large circular bed dominated the center of the room, its surface shimmering with an energy-absorbing material. "This space has been designed to contain and channel any energy surges," Dr. Lyra explained, gesturing to the subtle patterns etched into the walls and floor. "It should provide a safe environment for you and the child as we continue to monitor your development." No sooner had they settled into the room than a knock at the door announced the arrival of Ambassador Thorne. The diplomat's usually composed demeanor showed signs of strain, his eyes bright with a mixture of excitement and concern. "Derek, Diana," he nodded to each of them in turn. "I've just concluded the initial negotiations with the progenitors. They've agreed to establish a permanent observation post here on Nijia." Derek raised an eyebrow. "That's significant. What does it mean for us? For our child?" Before Thorne could respond, the hybrid child in Derek's arms began to glow, emitting a soft, pulsating light. The ambassador's eyes widened as he watched the infant's form shift and grow before his eyes, limbs lengthening and features becoming more defined. "Extraordinary," Thorne breathed. "This is precisely why the progenitors have chosen to stay. They believe your child represents a new chapter in the evolution of our species. Of all species, perhaps." Diana moved closer to Derek, her hand resting protectively on their child's back. "And what about the people outside? How are they reacting to all of this?" Thorne's expression tightened. "That's a bit more complicated. General Kraz and Colonel Steele are doing their best to manage the situation, but the energy surge from your—" He paused, searching for the right words. "In an intimate moment earlier has triggered a new wave of changes among the hybrid-affected population." As if on cue, a distant commotion could be heard through the walls of their quarters. The child stirred in Derek's arms, its eyes focusing on the direction of the sound with unsettling intensity. Dr. Lyra's antennae twitched rapidly as she checked her monitors. "The child's brain activity is off the chart," she reported. "It's as if it's responding to the energy patterns of the crowd outside." Derek and Diana exchanged a look, their enhanced hybrid physiology allowing them to communicate volumes without words. They knew their lives would never be the same, but the scale of the changes unfolding around them was only now becoming clear. Outside their quarters, the facility buzzed with frantic activity. Engineers rushed to prepare for the construction of the new research complex, while security personnel struggled to maintain order among the growing crowd of hybrid-affected individuals. In the command center, General Kraz's mandibles clicked with agitation as he surveyed the chaotic scene on the monitors. "We need to implement those training programs immediately," he barked to his staff. "These people need to learn to control their abilities before someone gets hurt." Colonel Steele nodded in agreement, his eyes fixed on a group of individuals who appeared to be moving small objects with their minds. "I'll begin organizing them into groups based on ability type," he said. "We'll need specialized instructors for each category." As the military leaders worked to bring order to the chaos, political tensions on Nugia began to rise. Senator Zorn, a prominent conservative Nigian politician, took to the public forums, his voice resonating with impossibly strong anger. "We cannot allow this unchecked spread of hybrid traits to continue," he declared, his mandibles quivering with emotion. "The very fabric of our society is at stake. We must act now to contain this invasion of our genetic purity." In response, a coalition of pro-hybridization activists quickly formed, their voices rising in opposition to Zorn's rhetoric. The Nigian Parliament and Human Colonial Administration found themselves caught in the middle of a rapidly escalating debate. Back in the secured living quarters, Derek and Diana watched in amazement as their child took its first tentative steps. The toddler's movements were accompanied by small bursts of energy that caused the lights in the room to flicker. Dr. Lyra, who had been monitoring the child's progress, stepped forward with a concerned expression. "We need to find a way to help the child control these energy emissions," she said. "At this rate of development, we could be dealing with adolescent-level abilities within days." As if in response to her words, the child turned its gaze to the Nigian doctor. Its eyes glowed with an inner light, and suddenly, the complex energy patterns etched into the walls of the room began to pulse and shift. Derek reached out to steady his child, feeling the raw power coursing through its small frame. "How do we even begin to prepare for this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Diana moved to his side, her own body glowing faintly in response to their child's energy. "Together," she said simply, her hand finding his. As they stood there, a family united in the face of an uncertain future, the facility around them continued to buzz with activity. The wheels of change were in motion, and the impact of their child's existence was only beginning to be felt across Nigia and beyond. Beyond Earth, the implications of their child's existence were only beginning to unfold. As days passed, the rate of change within the facility accelerated at a dizzying pace. Derek and Diana watched in awe as their child, whom they had named Zara, grew at an unprecedented rate. Within a matter of days, Zara had reached a developmental stage equivalent to a human 5-year-old, her body and mind evolving rapidly to accommodate her extraordinary abilities. "Mama, Papa, look," Zara exclaimed, her voice clear and articulate as she manipulated a small sphere of energy between her palms. The air around her crackled with potential, causing the lights in their living quarters to flicker erratically. Derek knelt beside his daughter, marveling at her control. "That's incredible, Zara. But remember what Dr. Lyra said about keeping your energy contained?" As if on cue, Dr. Lyra entered the room, her antennae twitching with excitement. "I see Zara's abilities are progressing nicely," she observed, her compound eyes gleaming. "We've established a dedicated research team to study her unique physiology. With your permission, of course, we'd like to begin a more intensive observation period." Diana nodded, her bioluminescent patterns swirling with a mix of pride and concern. "Of course, Doctor. We want to understand this as much as you do." Outside their living quarters, the facility bustled with increased activity. Through the viewports, Derek and Diana could see the beginnings of construction on the joint Human-Nigian Research Institute. General Kraz's vision was taking shape, with crews working around the clock to erect the state-of-the-art complex. As Zara's training intensified, so did the political climate on Nigia. Ambassador Thorne called for a summit of human and Nigian leaders to address the rapid changes sweeping across the planet. The newly constructed conference center, designed to accommodate both species, buzzed with tension as delegates arrived. Derek and Diana, accompanied by Zara and Dr. Lyra, made their way to the conference center. As they entered, the room fell silent, all eyes drawn to the young hybrid child who radiated an otherworldly energy. Ambassador Thorne stepped forward, his face a mask of diplomatic calm. "Esteemed colleagues, we are here to discuss the future of our two species in light of recent developments. The hybridization process has presented us with unprecedented challenges and opportunities." As the ambassador spoke, Zara's attention wandered. her eyes glowing with an inner light fixed on a group of progenitors hovering near the back of the room. Without warning, she broke away from her parents and approached the ancient beings. The room collectively held its breath as Zara reached out, her small hand passing through the progenitor's energy field. Suddenly, complex patterns of light erupted around them, filling the air with swirling strands of genetic information. Dr. Lyra rushed forward, her scanner beeping frantically. Incredible! She's accessing and interpreting their genetic data at a level we've never seen before. The progenitors pulsed with increased intensity, their ethereal forms shifting in response to Zara's touch. Zephyr, standing nearby, began translating their rapid light patterns. "They say the child has unlocked a new level of understanding," Zephyr announced, his voice filled with awe. "They wish to share more of their knowledge with us to help guide the future development of hybrid individuals." As the implications of this revelation rippled through the conference center, tensions outside the facility continued to escalate. Senator Zorn's followers had gathered in greater numbers, their angry chants echoing across the plaza. "Contain the hybrids! Protect our genetic purity!" they shouted, waving signs and banners. In response, a group of hybrid-affected humans and Nigeans formed a peaceful counter-protest. They stood in silent solidarity, their bodies glowing with soft light, demonstrating their newfound abilities in controlled, non-threatening ways. General Kraz, watching the scene unfold from the command center, issued new orders to his security teams. "Establish a buffer zone around the facility and construction site," he commanded, his mandibles clicking with purpose. "I want a joint force of human and Nigean personnel trained in handling hybrid abilities. We must maintain order while respecting the rights of all individuals." As the day wore on, Derek and Diana returned to their quarters with Zara, exhausted but exhilarated by the day's events. As they settled in for the night, their bodies naturally drew closer, the familiar spark of energy building between them. Dr. Lyra's voice came over the intercom, interrupting the moment. "Derek, Diana, our new containment system is online. You're free to proceed. The excess energy will be channeled to power various systems within the facility." Diana laughed softly, her skin shimmering with anticipation. "Well, at least our intimate moments are contributing to science now." As they embraced, a wave of energy washed over them, but this time it was contained, directed, and put to use. Outside their quarters, the facility hummed with newfound power, a testament to the potential that lay within their union. In the early hours of the morning, Zara woke suddenly, her eyes wide and glowing. "Mama, Papa," she called out, her voice trembling with an otherworldly certainty. "Something's coming. I can see it." Derek and Diana exchanged worried glances. Their daughter's newfound precognitive abilities had been growing stronger, and each prediction brought with it a mix of wonder and apprehension. As the first light of Nigia's binary suns crept over the horizon, the family prepared to face another day of scientific breakthroughs, political negotiations, and the ongoing challenge of raising a child whose very existence was rewriting the future of two species. The Joint Research Institute loomed on the horizon, a symbol of progress and cooperation, even as the crowds outside the facility grew more restless with each passing hour. The future seemed to unfold before them, filled with both promise and uncertainty. As dawn broke, Derek and Diana found themselves packing their belongings, preparing for a move that would change their lives once again. The newly constructed Joint Research Institute loomed on the horizon, its sleek architecture a testament to the rapid progress of human-Nigian cooperation. "Are you ready for this?" Derek asked, his hand resting gently on Diana's shoulder. She nodded, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "As ready as we'll ever be. It's for Zara's sake, after all." Their daughter, now resembling a human 5-year-old in appearance, bounded into the room, her eyes glowing with an inner light. "New home!" she exclaimed, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. As they made their way to the Institute, escorted by a security detail led by Colonel Steele, Derek couldn't help but notice the growing crowds outside the facility. The air was thick with tension, punctuated by the occasional shout from protesters on both sides of the hybridization debate. Upon entering the Institute, they were greeted by Dr. Lyra, her antennae twitching with nearly unleashed excitement. "Welcome to your new home," she said, gesturing towards a set of doors that slid open silently. "We've designed these quarters specifically to accommodate your unique needs." The family stepped into a spacious living area, marveling at the advanced technology seamlessly integrated into every surface. Zara immediately ran to a large window, pressing her hands against the transparent material as she gazed out at the bustling research complex below. "The entire space is equipped with energy-absorbing materials," Dr. Lyra explained, her compound eyes gleaming. "It should provide a safe environment for Zara to explore her abilities without risk to the surrounding infrastructure." No sooner had the words left her mouth than Zara let out a delighted squeal, a pulse of energy radiating from her small frame. The lights in the room flickered momentarily before stabilizing, drawing a concerned look from Derek. "Perhaps we should begin our assessment sooner rather than later," Dr. Lyra suggested, her tone carefully neutral. Over the next few days, the family underwent a battery of tests designed to explore the full extent of their hybrid physiology. Derek found himself running on a treadmill for hours without tiring, his enhanced stamina pushing the limits of the equipment. Diana demonstrated remarkable cellular regeneration, healing from minor cuts and abrasions in a matter of minutes. But it was Zara who truly captured the researchers' attention. During a cognitive assessment, she solved complex mathematical equations with ease, her mind processing information at an unprecedented rate. In an energy manipulation exercise, she formed intricate patterns of light in the air, weaving them into shapes that seemed to defy the laws of physics. It was during one such test that things took an unexpected turn. As Zara concentrated on manipulating a sphere of energy between her palms, her eyes suddenly glowed with an intense light. Without warning, a massive pulse of energy erupted from her body, sending a shockwave through the testing chamber. Alarms blared as the facility's power grid fluctuated wildly. Emergency lights flickered on and off, casting eerie shadows across the panicked faces of the research team. "Containment breach in Section 3, a voice shouted over the intercom. "All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately." Dr. Lyra rushed to Zara's side, her scanner beeping frantically as she assessed the child's condition. "She's all right," she announced, relief evident in her voice. "But this incident underscores the need for more robust safety measures." In the aftermath of the energy surge, a team of human and Nigen engineers was quickly assembled to design an advanced energy dampening system. Working around the clock, they began installing a network of devices throughout the institute, each capable of absorbing and redirecting excess energy emissions. As the family adjusted to their new life within the confines of the research institute, tensions outside continued to escalate. News of the energy surge had leaked to the public, fueling the fears of those opposed to hybridization. One evening, as Derek and Diana watched a news broadcast from their quarters, they saw Senator Zorn addressing a crowd of agitated supporters. "This is precisely what we've been warning about," the Nigean politician declared, his mandibles quivering with emotion. "These hybrids pose a clear and present danger to our society. We must act now to contain this threat." The camera panned to show a surge of protesters pushing against the security perimeter around the facility. General Kraz's voice could be heard issuing orders to his security teams, urging restraint even as the situation threatened to spiral out of control. Diana turned away from the screen, her skin pulsing with a mix of anger and sadness. "How can they not see the potential good that could come from this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Derek pulled her close, feeling the familiar spark of energy between them. "They're afraid of what they don't understand," he replied softly. "But we can't let that stop us from moving forward." As if in response to the charged atmosphere, the newly installed dampening system hummed to life, absorbing the excess energy generated by their embrace. The lights in their quarters dimmed slightly, the power redirected to other critical systems within the facility. In the adjacent room, Zara stirred in her sleep, her small form glowing faintly. Her dreams were filled with visions of swirling DNA strands and pulsing energy fields, a subconscious exploration of her rapidly evolving abilities. Outside, the protests continued into the night, a cacophony of voices both for and against the hybridization process. Inside the research institute, however, a different kind of energy pulsed, one of scientific discovery and the promise of a future where humans and Nigeans might evolve together in ways never before imagined. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Dr. Lyra stood in her lab, poring over the latest data from the family's tests. Her antennae twitched with excitement as she noticed a pattern emerging, one that could potentially explain the mechanism behind the spread of hybrid traits. With renewed perseverance, she set to work, knowing that each new discovery brought them one step closer to unraveling the mysteries of their changing world. As Dr. Lyra delved deeper into her research, the institute buzzed with activity. Scientists hurried through corridors, their voices animated with excitement over new discoveries. In the midst of this fervent atmosphere, an ominous undercurrent began to surface. Deep within the lower levels of the facility, a group of anti-hybridization extremists had been biding their time. They had infiltrated the institute weeks ago, posing as maintenance workers and low-level staff. Now, as the facility reached peak activity, they initiated their sabotage plan. The first sign of trouble came as a subtle flicker in the lights. Derek, who had been reviewing data with Diana in their quarters, looked up with a frown. "Did you notice that?" Before Diana could respond, a series of loud explosions rocked the building. Alarms blared, their shrill wails echoing through every corridor. The room plunged into darkness for a moment before emergency lights sputtered to life, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "Warning, containment breach detected. Multiple system failures in progress," an automated voice announced over the intercom. Derek and Diana exchanged alarmed glances. They could feel the change in the air, a crackling energy that made their hybrid physiology react instinctively. Diana's skin began to pulse with increasingly bright bioluminescent patterns, while Derek felt a surge of strength course through his muscles. "Zara!" they exclaimed in unison, rushing to their daughter's room. They found Zara already awake, her small form glowing intensely. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and concentration as she raised her hands, creating a shimmering energy field around herself. "Mama, Papa, bad people," she said, her voice trembling. "They want to hurt us." As if in response to her words, a massive surge of energy rippled through the facility. The dampening systems, compromised by the saboteurs, failed to contain it. Derek and Diana felt the uncontrolled hybrid energy wash over them, their bodies reacting violently to the influx. Diana gasped as her bioluminescence flared to blinding levels. Derek grunted in pain as his muscles spasmed and grew, threatening to tear through his clothes. They stumbled, overwhelmed by the intensity of the energy coursing through them. Zara, seeing her parents' distress, extended her protective field to encompass them. The young hybrid's face scrunched up with effort as she struggled to maintain the shield against the chaotic energy battering against it. Outside their quarters, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Dr. Lyra and her team raced against time, their fingers flying over control panels as they attempted to restore the dampening systems. Sweat beaded on the Nigean scientist's forehead as she worked, her antennae twitching with agitation. "The sabotage is more extensive than we thought," she called out to her team. "We need to reroute power to the auxiliary containment grid." General Kraz's voice crackled over the comm system. "Dr. Lyra, we've got multiple breaches. My teams are struggling to maintain order. We need those systems back online now." As the crisis escalated, ethereal forms of light began to materialize throughout the affected areas. The progenitors had sensed the danger and intervened, their advanced abilities absorbing and redirecting the excess hybrid energy. Their efforts provided some relief, but it wasn't enough to fully contain the situation. Ambassador Thorne burst into the control room, his usually composed demeanor replaced by urgent dedication. "Dr. Lyra, we need to implement the emergency protocol. It's our only chance." Lyra's compound eyes widened. "But sir, it hasn't been fully tested. The risks are less than the alternative," Thorne interrupted. "Do it." With a nod, Lyra activated the experimental system. Deep beneath the facility, massive containment units hummed to life, powered by the stored hybrid energy from Derek and Diana's previous encounters. The air thrummed with power as the redirection system engaged, creating channels to funnel the chaotic energy away from the populated areas of the Institute. Meanwhile, in their quarters, Zara's abilities underwent a startling evolution. As she strained to maintain the protective field around her family, her consciousness seemed to expand. Suddenly, she could sense the Institute's systems as clearly as if they were extensions of her own body. "I can help," she whispered, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. To Derek and Diana's amazement, Zara began to interface directly with the Institute's systems. Her small hands moved in intricate patterns, manipulating unseen energy fields. In the control room, Dr. Lyra gasped as she saw the dampening fields begin to recalibrate, guided by an unseen force. "Impossible," she breathed, watching as the system stabilized under Zara's influence. As the combined efforts of the research team, security forces, and the progenitors began to bring the situation under control, a new complication arose. Reports flooded in from outside the facility of spontaneous hybrid transformations occurring among the protesters and bystanders caught in the energy surge. General Kraz, coordinating the security response, received the news with a grim expression. "The situation outside is deteriorating. We've got panicked civilians manifesting unpredictable abilities. Request immediate assistance for containment and crowd control." As the immediate danger within the Institute subsided, the full impact of the sabotage attempt began to unfold. The Research Institute, once a beacon of scientific progress, now stood as a testament to the volatile nature of the hybridization process. Systems remained offline, equipment lay damaged, and the air still crackled with residual energy. In the aftermath, Dr. Lyra began the daunting task of assessing the impact on Derek, Diana, and Zara. Initial scans revealed significant changes in their hybrid physiology, their abilities amplified beyond previous levels. As Lyra studied the results, her scientific curiosity warred with concern over the implications of such rapid evolution. Outside the facility, the world they knew had changed irrevocably. The massive energy surge had accelerated the hybridization process in countless individuals, creating a new wave of hybrid-affected humans and Nigians. As reports continued to pour in, it became clear that the events of this day would reshape the future of both species in ways no one could have predicted. The world held its breath, waiting to see how this new chapter in human-Nigian relations would unfold. As the dust settled from the sabotage attempt, the Research Institute buzzed with activity. Dr. Lyra and her team worked tirelessly to repair damaged systems and assess the full impact of the energy surge. In the midst of this chaos, an unexpected development emerged. Derek and Diana, still reeling from the intensity of their experience, found themselves drawn to each other with a newfound urgency. Their enhanced hybrid physiology heightened every sensation, every touch sparking with electrical intensity. As they embraced in their quarters, a surge of energy pulsed through their bodies, overwhelming the newly repaired dampening systems. Alarms blared throughout the facility as the energy spike registered on the monitoring equipment. Dr. Lyra rushed to the control room, her antennae twitching with concern. As she analyzed the readings, her eyes widened with a mixture of scientific fascination and practical worry. "We need to implement a new protocol," she announced to her team. "Derek and Diana's energy output has increased exponentially. We can't risk further overloads." Within hours, a specialized chamber was prepared deep within the facility. The walls hummed with advanced energy collection and storage systems, designed to harness the power generated by the couple's intimate moments. Derek and Diana exchanged nervous glances as Dr. Lyra explained the situation. "We believe your enhanced physiology is causing these energy surges," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "This chamber will allow us to safely contain and study the energy you produce." As the couple settled into their new quarters, Zara's abilities continued to evolve in surprising ways. The young hybrid moved through the facility with growing confidence, her small hands trailing along control panels and screens. To the amazement of the research team, systems seemed to respond to her mere presence, optimizing and recalibrating without any apparent input. Dr. Lyra, intrigued by this development, set up a series of controlled experiments to explore the extent of Zara's talents. In one test, she presented the child with a malfunctioning piece of equipment. Zara approached the device, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. She placed her hand on the casing, and the machine sprang to life, operating more efficiently than ever before. "Remarkable," Dr. Lyra murmured, her antennae quivering with excitement. "She's not just interfacing with our systems, she's improving them." While the research team focused on understanding these new developments, General Kraz took action against the anti-hybridization movement. Armed with intelligence gathered from the captured saboteurs, he launched a series of coordinated raids across Nigia. The operations moved with swift precision. Kraz's team stormed hideouts and safe houses, catching extremist cells off guard. Among those arrested was a high-ranking official in Senator Zorn's political party, sending shockwaves through the anti-hybridization movement. As news of the raid spread, a temporary lull fell over Nigia. The extremists, their leadership in disarray, retreated to the shadows. Ambassador Thorne seized this opportunity to push forward with his integration plans. "We need to show the public the positive aspects of hybridization," Thorne declared in a meeting with Dr. Lyra and General Kraz. "I propose a series of controlled demonstrations, showcasing the abilities of hybrid individuals in various public sector roles." The pilot program began with carefully selected hybrid-affected individuals placed in key positions across Nijian society. As part of this initiative, Derek and Diana were invited to participate in public demonstrations of their abilities. The first event was held in a large arena on the outskirts of the capital. Derek and Diana stood center stage, their skin glowing with terrifying energy. As cameras broadcast the event across Nigia, they began a carefully choreographed display of strength and agility. Derek lifted impossibly heavy objects with ease, while Diana demonstrated her enhanced reflexes, dodging holographic projectiles with graceful precision. The crowd watched in awe as the couple manipulated energy fields, creating dazzling displays of light and power. As the demonstration reached its climax, something unexpected occurred. The intense emotions and physical exertion triggered a massive energy surge in Derek and Diana. Their bodies pulsed with blinding light, and a wave of power rippled outward. The containment systems at the venue, unprepared for such intensity, overloaded in an instant. The energy wave washed over the spectators, many of whom cried out in shock and confusion. General Kraz, present at the event, sprang into action. "Initiate emergency containment protocols," he barked into his communicator. "We need medical teams here immediately." As panic spread through the crowd, it became clear that the energy surge had affected many of the spectators. Some displayed sudden bursts of strength, while others developed patches of bioluminescent skin. Within hours, a temporary medical facility was established near the arena. Dr. Lyra and her team worked tirelessly, racing to stabilize the newly affected individuals. The air crackled with tension as they fought to prevent dangerous mutations and control the spread of hybrid traits. Amidst the chaos, Zara once again proved invaluable. The young hybrid stood in the center of the medical facility, her eyes closed in concentration. As she interfaced with the medical equipment, Dr. Lyra noticed a marked improvement in their ability to stabilize the affected individuals. "She's helping us develop a more effective treatment protocol," Dr. Lyra explained to a harried Ambassador Thorne. "Without her, we'd be facing a much more dire situation." As news of the incident spread across Nigia, public opinion polarized further. Supporters of hybridization hailed the event as a breakthrough, a sign of rapid evolution and progress. Opponents, however, saw their worst fears confirmed, pointing to the uncontrolled nature of the hybridization process. In the midst of this turmoil, a new voice emerged. Kale, a charismatic, hybrid-affected individual, began to rally support among the newly transformed population. His message of empowerment and autonomy resonated strongly, particularly with younger Nigians and humans. "We are not a threat to be contained," Kale declared in a viral video message. "We are the future, and we deserve a say in how that future unfolds." As Kale's movement gained momentum, Ambassador Thorne recognized the need for swift action. He arranged a meeting with Kale and other emerging hybrid community leaders, hoping to establish a framework for integration that would address the concerns of all parties. The situation on Nigia remained tense, balanced on a knife's edge between progress and chaos. At the Research Institute, Derek, Diana, and Zara found themselves at the center of a rapidly evolving landscape, their actions and abilities shaping the course of history for both humans and Nigens. Dr. Lyra, reviewing the latest data from their energy output, couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of the hybridization process. As she prepared for another round of tests, she wondered what new revelations awaited them in the days to come. Dr. Lyra's eyes widened as she analyzed the latest data from Derek and Diana's containment chamber. The energy readings had spiked dramatically, far beyond anything they had previously recorded. She leaned closer to the monitor, her antennae twitching with a mixture of excitement and concern. "This is unprecedented," she murmured, calling over her lead researcher. "Look at these gravitational fluctuations. And here," she pointed to another graph, "localized atmospheric disturbances." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Lyra rushed to the observation window overlooking Derek and Diana's chamber. Inside, she saw the air shimmering with energy, small objects levitating and swirling in a localized vortex. "Initiate emergency protocols," she shouted, her voice carrying over the cacophony of alarms. "We need to stabilize the chamber immediately." Teams of researchers and technicians scrambled into action, working feverishly to contain the surge of energy emanating from the hybrid couple. As they battled to bring the situation under control, Dr. Lyra's mind raced with the implications of what she was witnessing. Once the immediate crisis had passed, she called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. "We need to reevaluate our entire approach," she declared, pacing the conference room. "The energy output from Derek and Diana has far exceeded our initial projections. We're no longer dealing with simple bioluminescence or electrical discharges. We're seeing effects on the fundamental forces of nature." After hours of intense discussion and planning, Dr. Lyra made a difficult decision. She approached Derek and Diana in their quarters, her expression grave. "I'm afraid we need to move you to a new facility," she explained, her voice soft but firm. "The energy you're producing during your intimate moments is becoming too powerful for our current containment systems." Derek and Diana exchanged worried glances. "Is it dangerous?" Diana asked, her hand instinctively moving to protect her abdomen. Dr. Lyra shook her head. "Not immediately, no. But we need to study these phenomena in a more controlled environment. We're constructing a new facility, isolated from the main complex, with advanced monitoring systems and energy sinks." As plans for the new facility were underway, Zara's unique abilities continued to astound the research team. The young hybrid had taken to spending time in the engineering labs, her small hands dancing over control panels and experimental devices. Dr. Lyra watched in amazement as Zara interfaced with a prototype energy converter, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The device, initially designed to capture and store hybrid energy emissions, began to hum with increased efficiency. "She's improving the design," one of the engineers whispered, awe evident in his voice. "The energy conversion rate has increased by 300%. Over the next few weeks, Zara worked alongside the research team, her intuitive understanding of hybrid energy proving invaluable. Together, they developed a series of devices capable of harnessing and directing the unique energies produced by hybrid individuals. The breakthrough came when they successfully created a stable power source using concentrated hybrid emissions. As the prototype hummed to life, bathing the lab in a soft, pulsating glow, Dr. Lyra felt a mix of pride and trepidation. "We've done it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've created a new form of energy production." The news of their success spread quickly, reaching the ears of Nigian industrial leaders. Within days, Dr. Lyra found herself in a meeting with Ambassador Thorne and a consortium of energy company representatives. "The potential applications are staggering," one executive said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Clean, renewable energy on a scale we've never seen before." Ambassador Thorne nodded, but his expression remained cautious. "We need to consider the ethical implications," he said, glancing at Dr. Lyra. "We're talking about using sentient beings as power sources." As the debate raged on, tensions outside the research facility continued to escalate. General Kraz burst into one of Dr. Lyra's meetings, his face grim. "We've got a situation," he announced, activating a holographic display. "A group calling themselves the Purists has launched attacks on several hybrid research facilities. They're using advanced weapons technology, unlike anything we've seen before." The room fell silent as they watched footage of the attacks. Hybrid individuals collapsed as waves of energy washed over them, their abilities seemingly neutralized. Ambassador Thorne's face hardened. "We need to respond to this threat," he said, turning to General Kraz. "I'm authorizing the formation of a specialized hybrid defense force. We'll need volunteers with advanced abilities." As plans for the defense force took shape, Derek found himself torn. The idea of militarizing hybrid abilities went against everything he had initially hoped for. Yet as he watched the footage of the Purist attacks, he realized the need for protection. "I'll help train them," he said finally, his voice heavy with reluctance. "But I won't lead them into battle. My place is here, with Diana and Zara." As Derek began working with the first group of hybrid volunteers, Diana and Zara were moved to the new isolated facility. The building hummed with advanced technology, designed to harness and study the incredible energies they produced. On their first night in the new facility, Diana pulled Derek close, her skin glowing softly in the dim light. "What's happening to us?" she whispered, a mix of fear and wonder in her voice. Derek had no answer, but as their bodies intertwined, the air around them began to shimmer and pulse. In the control room, alarms blared as sensors detected a localized distortion in spacetime. Dr. Lyra rushed to the observation window, her eyes widening in disbelief. There, in the center of Derek and Diana's room, a small, swirling vortex had appeared, a wormhole, stable and pulsing with energy. As the research team scrambled to analyze this new phenomenon, Dr. Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed a threshold. The hybridization process, it seemed, held far more potential and danger than anyone had ever imagined. As Dr. Lyra stared at the swirling vortex in Derek and Diana's room, her antennae quivered with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "This is unprecedented," she breathed, her eyes fixed on the pulsating anomaly. The wormhole, rather than dissipating as expected, maintained its stability. Dr. Lyra quickly snapped into action, her scientific mind racing with possibilities and potential dangers. "Initiate containment protocols," she barked into her communicator. "I want a full perimeter established around this section of the facility immediately." As alarms blared throughout the Institute, Derek and Diana stood transfixed, their bodies still intertwined, skin glowing with residual energy. "What's happening?" Diana whispered, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of sirens and rushing feet outside their room. Before Derek could respond, Dr. Lyra's voice came through the room's communication system. "Derek, Diana, I need you to remain calm and stay exactly where you are. We're establishing a containment field around your quarters. Do not attempt to approach or interact with the anomaly." Ambassador Thorne, upon receiving news of the developing situation, immediately postponed the emergency summit he had been preparing for. His hovercraft touched down at the Institute within the hour, flanked by a contingent of security personnel. "What's the situation, Dr. Lyra?" he demanded as he strode into the makeshift command center. Dr. Lyra's fingers danced across a series of holographic displays, her eyes darting between readouts. "The wormhole appears to be stable, Ambassador, but its energy output is increasing steadily. We've evacuated all non-essential personnel from this wing of the facility." Thorne's brow furrowed as he absorbed the information. "And Derek and Diana?" "They're safe for now," Dr. Lyra assured him. "We're monitoring their condition closely. They seem to be the catalyst for this phenomenon, but we don't yet understand the full extent of their involvement." As if on cue, General Kraz burst into the room, his normally stoic demeanor visibly shaken. "Ambassador, we've got reports coming in from the surrounding area. Civilians are experiencing strange occurrences." Thorne turned to face the general, his expression grim. "What kind of occurrences?" "Spatial displacements," Kraz replied, activating a holographic map of the region. Red dots began to appear, spreading outward from the Institute. People are reporting brief moments of teleportation, for lack of a better term. They find themselves in unfamiliar locations, only to snap back to where they were moments later. Ambassador Thorne's face hardened. "Expand the evacuation zone," he ordered. "I want checkpoints established at all access points. No one goes in or out without express authorization." As General Kraz relayed the orders to his troops, Dr. Lyra approached Derek and Diana's observation window. Inside, the couple had separated, each sitting on opposite sides of the room, their skin still pulsing with faint bioluminescence. "Derek, Diana," Dr. Lyra spoke into the intercom. "I need your help. We have to understand what's causing this anomaly. Are you willing to assist us in our research?" Derek and Diana exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Derek nodded. "We'll do whatever we can to help," he said, his voice steady despite the tension evident in his posture. Over the next few hours, under Dr. Lyra's careful guidance, Derek and Diana attempted to recreate the conditions that had led to the wormhole's formation. They focused their energy, channeling it in controlled bursts, while a battery of sensors recorded every fluctuation. As they worked, Zara was brought into the command center. The young hybrid's unique abilities had proven invaluable in past crises, and Dr. Lyra hoped she might provide insight into the nature of the anomaly. Zara's eyes glowed as she interfaced with the Institute's systems, her small form seeming to vibrate with the influx of data. "The wormhole. It's not just a tear in space," she said, her voice taking on an otherworldly timbre. "It's a confluence of energies, a nexus point between dimensions." Dr. Lyra leaned in, fascinated. "Can you help us predict its behavior, Zara? We need to understand how it might evolve." As Zara worked with the research team to develop a predictive model, the situation outside the Institute continued to deteriorate. Reports of spatial anomalies increased in frequency and intensity, causing panic among the local population. General Kraz's forces struggled to maintain order as frightened civilians attempted to flee the affected area. The general himself oversaw the establishment of a series of checkpoints, his teeth gritted as he watched the stream of evacuees. "We can't keep this contained forever," he muttered to himself, eyeing the horizon where the faintest shimmer of energy distortions was becoming visible. Back in the research wing, Derek and Diana's continued efforts to manipulate the wormhole had unexpected consequences. During a particularly intense energy emission, the anomaly suddenly expanded, nearly doubling in size. Alarms blared as the containment field strained to adapt. Dr. Lyra rushed to the observation window, her eyes wide with concern. "Derek, Diana, stop! We need to reassess the situation." As the couple ceased their efforts, the wormhole pulsed ominously, its swirling energies casting eerie shadows across the room. Dr. Lyra turned to her team, her expression grim. "We need a new approach," she declared. "This anomaly is growing beyond our ability to control. We need to find a way to stabilize it, or better yet, close it entirely." As if in response to her words, a new communication channel opened on the main display. The image that appeared caused a hush to fall over the command center. The elongated, otherworldly features of a progenitor filled the screen, its multifaceted eyes seeming to take in every detail of the room at once. "Greetings, Dr. Lyra." The progenitor's voice resonated with an almost musical quality. "We have been observing your situation with great interest. We believe we may be able to offer some assistance in dealing with this anomaly." Ambassador Thorne stepped forward, his diplomatic training kicking in despite the unprecedented nature of the situation. "We welcome any assistance you can provide," he said, bowing slightly. "The situation is becoming critical." As the progenitor began to share their knowledge of similar phenomena encountered in their long history, a commotion erupted outside the command center. General Kraz burst in, his uniform singed and his expression thunderous. "We're under attack," he shouted. "The Purists have launched a coordinated assault on our perimeter. They've got some kind of hybrid suppressing technology. Our defenses are failing." The room erupted into chaos as alarms blared anew. Ambassador Thorne turned to Dr. Lyra, his expression grave. "We need to implement whatever plan you have, Doctor, and we need to do it now." Dr. Lyra nodded, her mind racing as she assimilated the progenitor's information and formulated a strategy. "We'll need Derek and Diana," she said. "Their energy is the key to stabilizing the wormhole." As General Kraz rushed to mobilize his forces against the Purist incursion, Dr. Lyra headed towards Derek and Diana's containment room, her steps quick and purposeful. Time was running out, and the fate of Nigia hung in the balance. The air crackled with tension as explosions rocked the facility. Dr. Lyra reached the containment room, her hand hovering over the access panel. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. The door slid open, revealing Derek and Diana, their faces etched with grit. "It's time," Dr. Lyra said, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "We need you to channel your energy one more time. The future of Nigia depends on it." As Derek and Diana nodded their assent, following Dr. Lyra toward the heart of the anomaly, the sounds of battle grew closer. The Purists had breached the outer defenses, and the fate of the entire planet now rested on the success of their desperate plan. The future of Nigia depends on it. Derek and Diana exchanged a determined glance, then followed Dr. Lyra out of the containment room. As they raced through the corridors of the embattled research institute, the sounds of combat grew louder. Explosions rocked the building, and the acrid smell of smoke filled the air. Rounding a corner, they came face to face with a group of Purist operatives. The saboteurs, clad in dark body armor and wielding energy weapons, immediately opened fire. Derek's enhanced reflexes kicked in, and he pushed Diana behind a nearby console for cover. "We don't have time for this," Derek growled, his muscles tensing as he prepared to engage. Diana's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. "I've got you covered," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. As Derek launched himself at the nearest Purist, Diana raised her hands, creating shimmering energy barriers that deflected the incoming weapons fire. The air crackled with the impact of energy bolts against her shields. Derek's fist connected with the first Purist's jaw, the enhanced strength of his hybrid physiology sending the operative flying backward. He spun, using his heightened agility to dodge a strike from another attacker, then swept the Purist's legs out from under him. As Derek grappled with a third operative, a stray energy bolt slipped past Diana's barrier, grazing his leg. He stumbled, letting out a hiss of pain. The Purist seized the opportunity, lunging forward with a vibroblade. Diana's eyes widened in alarm. With a gesture, she redirected her energy, creating a localized field that slowed the Purist's movement. This gave Derek the split second he needed to recover, disarming the operative and knocking him unconscious with a well-placed strike. With the immediate threat neutralized, Diana rushed to Derek's side. "You're hurt," she said, her voice tight with concern. Derek winced as he tried to put weight on his injured leg. "It's not too bad, but it'll slow us down." Diana placed her hand on Derek's leg, channeling her hybrid energy into the wound. A soft glow emanated from her palm, and Derek felt the pain recede to a dull ache. "That should help for now," Diana said, helping Derek to his feet. "We need to keep moving." They pressed on towards the wormhole chamber, the sounds of battle echoing through the institute. As they approached their destination, they could hear the frantic voices of Dr. Lyra and her team. Inside the chamber, Dr. Lyra barked orders as her team worked to implement the containment plan. Holographic displays flickered and distorted, affected by the pulsating energy of the expanding wormhole. "The anomaly is interfering with our equipment," one of the researchers shouted over the din. "We're having to recalibrate on the fly." Dr. Lyra's antennae twitched with agitation as she made rapid adjustments to the containment field parameters. "Zara, we need your help," she called out to the young hybrid. Zara stepped forward, her eyes glowing as she interfaced directly with the Institute's computer systems. Her small form vibrated with the influx of data, and the holographic displays stabilized. "I'm optimizing the containment field," Zara said, her voice taking on that otherworldly timbre. "Compensating for the wormhole's fluctuations." As Derek and Diana entered the chamber, Dr. Lyra looked up, relief washing over her face. "Thank goodness you're here," she said. "We need you to channel your energy into the stabilization system immediately." The couple moved into position, standing on either side of a circular platform ringed with pulsing energy conduits. As they joined hands, their skin began to glow with an intensifying bioluminescence. "Ready when?" Derek asked, looking into Diana's eyes. She nodded, squeezing his hand. "Together." They closed their eyes, focusing their hybrid energy into the stabilization system. The air around them began to shimmer and crackle as waves of power flowed from their bodies into the containment field. The wormhole pulsed violently, its swirling vortex expanding and contracting in rapid succession. The chamber filled with an otherworldly howl as space-time itself seemed to strain against the anomaly's pull. Suddenly, several key components of the containment system overloaded, showering the room with sparks. Alarms blared as the stabilization field fluctuated dangerously. "We're losing containment," Dr. Lyra shouted, her fingers flying over the control panels. "Zara, I need you to reconfigure the power grid. Reroute all emergency reserves to the stabilization system." Zara's eyes glowed even brighter as she interfaced with the Institute's power systems. Energy conduits throughout the facility dimmed as power was diverted to the wormhole chamber. Derek and Diana struggled to maintain their focus, the strain of channeling such immense energy taking its toll. Sweat beaded on their brows and their muscles trembled with exertion. Dr. Lyra watched the couple's vital signs with growing concern. "They can't keep this up much longer," she muttered, her mind racing for a solution. With a look of unwavering commitment, she moved to a sealed container in the corner of the room. Inside was an experimental device, untested under such extreme conditions. Dr. Lyra hesitated for a moment, then activated the machine. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the device powered up, amplifying the hybrid energy signatures in the room. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The containment field surged with renewed strength, pushing back against the expanding wormhole. Derek and Diana gasped as they felt the amplification, their bodies lifting off the ground as energy coursed through them. The wormhole's event horizon fluctuated wildly, spatial distortions rippling through the chamber. Outside, the sounds of battle grew closer. General Kraz's voice echoed through the comm system. "We can't hold them back much longer. Whatever you're doing in there, do it fast." The experimental amplifier began to overheat, its casing glowing red-hot. Dr. Lyra watched in horror as cracks began to form along its surface. "It's going to overload," she shouted. "Everyone, take cover!" Before anyone could react, the device exploded in a blinding flash of light. The shock wave disrupted the containment field and the wormhole expanded rapidly. Derek and Diana, still suspended in midair, were engulfed by a surge of energy from the anomaly. As the research team watched in stunned silence, Derek and Diana's bodies began to change. Their skin took on a luminescent quality, shimmering with otherworldly patterns. Their eyes glowed with an intense alien light. The couple remained suspended in the swirling vortex of energy, their transformed bodies unconsciously channeling massive amounts of hybrid power into the containment field. The wormhole's expansion slowed, but the air crackled with uncontrolled energy. Dr. Lyra and her team worked frantically to stabilize the situation, their equipment sparking and failing around them. Through the observation windows, they could see General Kraz and his hybrid soldiers engaged in fierce hand-to-hand combat with the advancing Purist forces. As alarms blared and systems fluctuated, Dr. Lyra realized that the fate of Nigia now hung in the balance. The wormhole's expansion had slowed, but Derek and Diana's transformation continued, their bodies evolving in ways she couldn't begin to understand. With the chamber bathed in the eerie glow of the anomaly and the transformed hybrids, Dr. Lyra knew that whatever happened next would change the course of history for both humans and aliens alike. As alarms blared and systems fluctuated, the chamber bathed in the eerie glow of the anomaly and the transformed hybrids. Dr. Lyra watched in awe as Derek and Diana's bodies continued to evolve, their skin shimmering with otherworldly patterns. Suddenly, the energy vortex surrounding them intensified, reaching a critical point. The couple's physical forms began to merge partially with the anomaly, creating a living bridge between dimensions. Their bodies pulsated with hybrid energy, unknowingly stabilizing the wormhole through an unexpected symbiosis. Dr. Lyra's antenna twitched rapidly as she processed this unprecedented development. "Zara, recalibrate the energy amplification device," she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Synchronize it with their new hybrid frequency." Zara's eyes glowed brightly as she interfaced with the Institute's systems. Her small form vibrated with the influx of data, as she worked to adjust the containment protocols. The holographic displays flickered and stabilized, showing a more controlled and sustainable energy flow. Outside the chamber, the sounds of battle grew louder. General Kraz's voice crackled over the comm system. "We've repelled the final wave of purist attackers, securing the perimeter now." As the immediate threat subsided, Ambassador Thorne's voice joined the communication channel. "I've initiated emergency protocols across Nigia. Medical teams and evacuation transports are on standby. We're also reaching out to neighboring systems for additional resources." Inside the chamber, Zara suddenly gasped, her eyes widening as she experienced a surge in her abilities. The influx of information from the wormhole and her parents' hybrid forms expanded her understanding exponentially. "Dr. Lyra," Zara called out, her voice taking on an otherworldly timbre, "I think I can help separate my parents from the wormhole. I've identified specific energy frequencies that could disrupt the connection safely." As the team began preparations for the separation procedure, strange energy signatures emanated from the wormhole. Dr. Lyra quickly assembled a group of xenolinguists and hybrid energy specialists to decipher the incoming signals. "It's the progenitors," one of the linguists announced, her voice filled with awe. "They're trying to communicate through the dimensional rift." The decoded message revealed crucial information about the nature of the wormhole and its connection to the hybridization process. Dr. Lyra's mind raced as she processed the implications of this new knowledge. "We need to act fast," she said, her voice urgent. "Prolonged exposure to this interdimensional gene flow could have unforeseen consequences for both humans and Nigians." The research team worked feverishly to construct a specialized containment chamber for Derek and Diana. As they made final adjustments, General Kraz burst into the room, his uniform singed and his expression grim. "We've intercepted a communication from the Purists," he reported. "They're planning a final attack with an antimatter device. My remaining hybrid forces are moving to intercept, but we need to finish this now." Dr. Lyra nodded, her face set with perseverance. "Initiating separation procedure," she announced, her fingers flying over the control panel. Zara stepped forward, her small form glowing with energy as she acted as a bridge between the containment systems and her parents' hybrid forms. The air crackled with tension as Dr. Lyra activated the carefully modulated energy pulse. The wormhole's event horizon fluctuated violently as Derek and Diana's bodies began to disentangle from the anomaly. The chamber shook as energy reactions cascaded through the facility, causing widespread system failures and structural damage. Alarms blared as power fluctuated throughout the complex. Dr. Lyra and her team fought to maintain control of the separation process, their faces illuminated by the pulsing light of failing equipment. Outside, the sounds of battle erupted once more as General Kraz's forces engaged the approaching Purist strike team. The clash of advanced weaponry and the cries of hybrid soldiers using their enhanced abilities echoed through the facility. Inside the chamber, Zara strained to stabilize the energy flow, her small body trembling with the effort. Sweat beaded on her brow as she worked tirelessly to protect her parents from the volatile forces surrounding them. With a final, violent pulse of energy, Derek and Diana's physical forms separated from the wormhole. The anomaly began to collapse in on itself, creating a powerful shock wave that rippled through the research complex. "Move them to the containment chamber now," Dr. Lyra shouted over the din of falling debris and failing equipment. The team rushed to transport the unconscious forms of Derek and Diana, dodging sparks from damaged conduits and leaping over crumbling sections of flooring. They reached the specialized chamber just as another tremor shook the facility. As they secured Derek and Diana inside, Dr. Lyra observed their bodies still undergoing subtle changes, adjusting to their new hybrid state. The wormhole, now reduced to a fraction of its former size, pulsated with residual energy behind them. Zara collapsed to her knees, exhausted from the mental strain. A researcher helped her to her feet as the team gathered around the containment chamber, watching Derek and Diana with a mixture of concern and scientific curiosity. The facility shuddered again, more violently this time. General Kraz's voice crackled over the comm system, filled with static. "The Purists are pushing through our defenses. We can't hold them back much longer." Dr. Lyra's antennae twitched as she assessed the situation. The wormhole was stable for now, but the facility was crumbling around them. Outside, the battle raged on, with the fate of the entire project hanging in the balance. She turned to her team, her eyes reflecting the pulsing light of the containment chamber. "Prepare for emergency evacuation," she ordered. "We need to get Derek and Diana to a secure location before—" Her words were cut off by a deafening explosion that rocked the entire complex. Alarms blared anew as the air filled with the acrid smell of smoke and ozone. Through the observation windows, they could see flashes of weapons fire drawing closer. Dr. Lyra's mind raced as she considered their dwindling options. The future of human-Nigen relations, the secrets of hybridization, and the lives of everyone in the facility now depended on their next move. With Derek and Diana incapacitated and the purists closing in, she knew they were running out of time. Time. The facility trembled again, dust and debris raining down from the ceiling. Dr. Lyra's antennae twitched rapidly as she assessed their dwindling options. "We need to move now," she said, her voice cutting through the cacophony of alarms and distant explosions. "Zara, can you interface with the containment chamber's transport systems?" The young hybrid nodded, her eyes glowing as she connected with the facility's network. The chamber hummed to life, its anti-gravity field activating with a soft whine. As the team prepared to evacuate, the observation windows shattered, showering the room with crystalline shards. Through the opening, they could see General Kraz locked in fierce combat with the purist leader, their enhanced forms blurring with speed and power. Kraz's voice crackled over the comm system, strained with effort. "Dr. Lyra, get them out of here. We'll hold them off as long as we can." The general's words were punctuated by a brilliant flash of energy as he deflected a blast from his opponent. The two combatants moved with inhuman grace, their fight a deadly dance of strength and skill. Inside the chamber, Derek and Diana began to stir. Their eyes, now glowing with an otherworldly light, snapped open simultaneously. The couple reached for each other instinctively, their touch generating a surge of energy that stabilized the failing life support systems. Dr. Lyra rushed to the chamber's control panel, her fingers flying over the interface. "Derek, Diana, can you hear me?" she called out, her voice tinged with urgency and hope. Diana's voice, altered but recognizable, responded, We can hear you, Dr. Lyra. What's happening?" As Dr. Lyra quickly briefed them on the situation, Derek and Diana's expressions shifted from confusion to perseverance. Despite their disorientation, they grasped the gravity of their circumstances. "We want to help," Derek said, his voice resonating with newfound power. "What can we do?" Dr. Lyra's mind raced, considering the possibilities. The wormhole is still active, though diminished. If we can close it completely, it might disable the purest weapons and give us a chance to escape. Zara stepped forward, her small form pulsing with energy. "I can establish a psychic link between us," she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly timbre. "It will allow us to synchronize our abilities." As Zara initiated the connection, Derek and Diana felt their consciousness expand, intertwining with their daughters. The family's hybrid abilities harmonized, creating a resonance that filled the chamber with shimmering energy. Outside, the battle reached its climax. The purist leader, his face contorted with rage, activated the antimatter device. General Kraz's eyes widened as he recognized the imminent threat. "No!" Kraz roared, summoning every ounce of his hybrid strength. He threw himself at the device, his body glowing with intense energy as he formed a protective shield around it. The antimatter explosion was contained within Kraz's barrier, but the effort left him severely weakened. He collapsed to his knees, his form flickering as he struggled to maintain consciousness. Inside the facility, Derek, Diana, and Zara began their attempt to close the wormhole. Their bodies strained with the effort, seeming to flicker between solid and energy states. Waves of power rippled through the chamber, causing the remaining equipment to spark and overload. Dr. Lyra and her team worked frantically to stabilize the containment field, their instruments barely able to keep up with the surge of hybrid energy. The air crackled with ozone as reality itself seemed to bend around the family. As the wormhole began to collapse, a final surge of interdimensional energy washed over Derek, Diana, and Zara. In that moment, their hybrid physiology adapted at an unprecedented rate, absorbing and processing genetic information from countless realities. The chamber filled with blinding light as the wormhole imploded. For a heartbeat, everything went silent and dark. Then slowly, emergency systems sputtered back to life, casting a dim glow over the scene. In the center of the chamber stood Derek, Diana, and Zara, their bodies emitting a soft, pulsating light. Their forms had stabilized, achieving a perfect synthesis of human and Nigean DNA, with new traits born from the interdimensional exposure. Dr. Lyra approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity warring with concern for her friends. "Are you all right?" she asked, her antennae twitching as she scanned their altered forms. The family embraced, their bioluminescent patterns synchronizing in a beautiful display. "We're more than all right," Diana said, her voice filled with wonder. "We're complete." As they turned to face Dr. Lyra and her team, the full extent of their transformation became apparent. Their eyes held depths of knowledge and power that seemed to transcend their physical forms. "The purists," Derek said suddenly, his enhanced senses reaching beyond the chamber walls. "They've stopped fighting. The collapse of the wormhole has neutralized their weapons." Dr. Lyra's comm unit crackled to life, General Kraz's weary voice coming through. "The remaining purist forces are surrendering. We've won, but barely. How are things on your end?" As Dr. Lyra began to respond, Derek, Diana, and Zara exchanged knowing looks. They could sense the changes rippling through Nagia, the shift in the balance of power, and the dawning of a new era for both humans and Nagians. The hybrid family stepped forward, ready to face the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. Their transformation had not only saved them, but had also opened up new possibilities for the future of their adopted world. As they prepared to leave the chamber and confront the aftermath of the battle, Derek took Diana's hand, their fingers intertwining. Zara stood between them, a bridge between two worlds and a symbol of hope for what was to come. The facility's main doors slid open, revealing the chaos of the battle's aftermath. Hybrid soldiers and surrendering purists alike turned to stare at the family as they emerged, their forms radiating an aura of power and purpose. In that moment, as they stepped out into the uncertain future, one thing was clear. The story of Nagia and its people was far from finished. It was, in many ways, just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.